in the back.
Good evening, everybody. I'll call to order the Durham Select Board meeting here on 1/23/24. We've got a quorum. We all stand for the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Let's see, we have any amendments to the agenda this evening? Okay, public comments. No public comments. All right, we'll move right into old business, and first up, 2024 budget article recommendation. Jerry?
So have you all reviewed I'm looking for information from you folks on what you're gonna recommend. I will go over some changes in the budget
Okay.
that happened, so you're aware of them. They were what we talked about, last time, so on page 2 of 15, we have added the full, state revenue share in line 13,6300. You'll see that that's changed to 742.14. So that's one change that you'll see in the budget you got tonight.
Okay.
All right. Another change that you will see is page 9 of 15, line 39, 7240. That 20,000 is changed to 18,650.
Jerry, can you repeat that page?
Yeah, 9 of 15,
In the line?
39, 7240.
Animal control.
Yep,
Yeah.
that is now 18,650.
Okay.
Okay? Page 14 of 15. To get the Union Church money up to 31,000, we had to add 9,543, making line 99,8500 under other finance uses. That goes from 457,293 to 466,836. Those are the changes that were made since the last time.
For board members, you guys have all taken a look at this. Any question, any further questions for Jerry?
This was originally a 6-figure number.
I don't think this got handed out either, so we'll get those two forward.
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah. Supplemental?
Yes. So what that does, by adding the new revenue and the changes, we're now at, using, fund balance of 445,000, brings you to the zero tax increase.
You said how much?
445,000, that's gonna be on,
Yeah, I see that.
you see it, okay. That's right on the first page.
First page,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So,
Yeah, Heather, go ahead.
since the revenue sharing was upped, does that also then change the calculation on the front?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, I didn't know if that was like auto gonna correct that number on the front page.
Yeah, it was $500,000 last week, or
Right.
last meeting with that
Right.
number. So it went from 500,000 to 445, so it actually went down because revenue sharing went up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That should add up.
How do you want to, like, if are we gonna go like article by article and talk about if we wanna like add or change, or how do you foresee this going?
I'm trying to think of how we did this last year as far as the articles go. What's that? One article by article. Okay.
We did typically say the boilerplate was when typically references like paying our bills and things like that, we kind of just pushed those to school, because they're always in there per se. It's
Like
almost
debt service and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's basically boilerplate at this point now. Really not paying them to do a change.
Right, so that, we just vote on the budget as a whole, pass this to the budget committee. And then create the articles, and then vote on the articles when the articles are created.
So do you wanna like start on page 6 and then like, does anybody have any changes and go like
Well,
department by department?
we can either do that, or, yeah, if anybody has any changes, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, I just didn't know, like,
Questions.
I have changes when we get like further down, so
Okay.
if, I didn't know if you wanted to like start with administration and then if
Yep.
nobody has any
Oh,
changes.
I can run through it real quick if you want to start top, yep.
You said that's traditionally how we did in the past, right?
For these ones here, yeah,
Yeah, from page 6 on,
Yeah.
the materials just facilitate article.
typically didn't go by each line here.
Yeah.
Right.
Just the bottom
Just by
line,
the bottom line.
unless somebody had a change.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. So, anybody have, any changes that they'd like to talk about on page 6, which is the administration budget? The actual, budget is $466,156, which is a 10% decrease. Any changes there? All right, and forgive me, but did we actually vote along the way or wait till the end for that?
There's really nothing typically to vote on this per
Other than
se,
just
other than, hey,
the whole budget
you can only
going
get
over.
to it until after the
Yeah.
budget committee's
Okay.
done. You can put a recommendation if you wanna change the number per se, but there's really nothing.
Okay. Maybe keep going.
One of the living,
Yeah,
So this 466,156 is the number that we're gonna recommend for the administration budget to the budget committee.
that's correct.
Okay.
Municipal buildings. Yeah, $22,235, yeah,
So my only, thing about this is that when we're talking about, the capital accounts and that we had the municipal, if we get to the point where we're gonna do the level funding
Yep.
situation, right? And when I asked about the roof for the fire department, that wasn't in the fire department thing, that was in the municipal buildings account.
Mhm.
So when I'm looking at this is the municipal buildings in the operating budget, right? But the maintenance items for the fire department and for public works are still in their operating budgets. And so I'm just wondering if those maintenance things for the building should really be in this section, that those numbers should be added here, because that's a municipal building expense versus a department expense, if we're gonna do the operating budget the same way that we're doing the capital budget.
Yeah, I mean, only because you mentioned the roof, so for example, like if it's just maintenance, it would be in one, but if it was a capital, like you're putting on a whole new roof, that would be a capital expenditure.
So-
That's sometimes where the confusion may lie, if that's what you're thinking.
so if you just flip really quick, just to use it as a reference point, page 9 of 15, line 30, 7253, it says building repairs and maintenance. And so, in my mind, if we're gonna try to move this to municipal buildings, that line for me would live over here under municipal buildings, and maybe Jerry has input about that.
Well, these maintenance are just low-cost maintenance stuff. If you need to replace a lock on a door, or you wanna paint out a room, these aren't capital maintenance.
No, I wasn't suggesting they were capital, I'm just saying, cause it's building maintenance, and we have a category that we're moving to called municipal buildings, if that should live over there.
The municipal buildings is just the operating of those municipal buildings, lights, electricity, basic maintenance, not capital expenditures on those.
Right, so really neither of these line items have to do with capital
Right.
expenditures.
No, I was
They're
just using it as a reference point, that if
Yeah.
we were gonna fund the capital accounts that way, and the building expenses were gonna be in the municipal building and not part of the fire department. When we get into the operating budget, if we're talking about building repairs for the fire department building is a municipal building. And so, I was saying that perhaps that line should be added over here instead, but if people don't agree, that's completely fine. I was just trying to be like apples to apples.
I don't think I necessarily disagree. I think what you're saying is anything that's gonna be for repairs and maintenance, combine all the buildings in
In one
tow in
place.
one, and it's all gonna go under one heading under the original versus, let's say, for lack of better words, classification throughout the town of a specific building per se. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either way. I think it's.
These municipal buildings in this category is everybody except the major departments, administration, public works, and fire.
Yeah,
So
the
you-
only reason why I brought it up was because there wasn't a building and repair line in the administration budget, and so I assumed that it was living in this budget.
Right, so when we wanna, just for an example, when we wanna replace a toilet, we didn't have a line to do that. So you wouldn't put that in capital,
Right.
right? So all your buildings need a little bit of maintenance that's not necessarily in the capital account.
So, where in here is where's the actual line item, maybe I'm looking right at it, I just don't have my sheet in front of me right here. Okay, never mind, no, I got it, I answered my own question. I mean, I see what you're saying, Heather, you know, what it says, I think it says, the buildings, the plural part, if you took the plural part off, that might work too, because then you're talking about the fire department building, the public works building. I guess it's something to consider. I'm not hard over either way, but I see what you're saying, you could put it in one line item for all of maintenance to do. Anybody,
I think what Jerry just said is that the municipal buildings is for everything but fire department, public works.
Right, you
And
have
so-
the Eureka Center, you got the gazebo, you used to have the Union Church.
Yeah.
Rather than having a single account for all of
Yeah.
those, you put them in the municipal
yeah, no, I see that too.
buildings. Or no, however you wanna do it. This is how I would do it.
The one doing it, so I mean, if that, I mean, I could go either way, it's really no, but if it makes it easier from administrative purpose and for your management perspective.
It's
then-
easier for
then I would
billing
yeah,
and coding
lean-
and that sort of thing.
Then I would lean that way, yeah.
Condenses it down, right?
Okay, so just one more clarifying question then about this. There is no building and repair line in administration. That's why I'm bringing it up. That
So,
doesn't,
can I clarify, so your question is why wouldn't you remove the building maintenance from administration, which lives in town hall, but not remove building maintenance from and put the building maintenance for administration into the municipal building, but not also put the rest of the municipal buildings in there, cause that's the only one that doesn't have its own maintenance line. So it seems like you would either wanna combine them all into one, or put the town offices building maintenance and repair back into administration, just so it remains consistent across all departments.
right, either that, consistent like that, or consistent so that it matches the way that we're doing, or what I assume we're going to do, but we're not there yet. It's fine, we can move on.
Well, I think it's a good question, and I would just say, like, Jerry, is there, just for our edification, is there a reason why it makes sense to take the town hall's maintenance and put it into municipal buildings, but not put any other large departments into municipal buildings? Just curious.
Say that one more time.
So is there a reason why the maintenance and repair for the town hall got pulled out of the administrative budget and put into municipal buildings, while the other two large departments, Public Works and the fire department, didn't have their building moved into municipal buildings for maintenance and repair purposes?
No,
It's just,
it's just the way it's
Yeah.
just the way it ended up.
yeah, okay, I just was curious, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm 6 of one, half dozen the other, as long as we all understand, I just,
Okay,
Jerry,
go ahead, yeah.
does that line include the $20,000 we need for the Eureka doors?
No, we're not
That
going
goes
there
somewhere
yet.
else?
No, yeah, I just got that information yesterday,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that later. Let's not confuse this.
All right. Anything else with municipal buildings? So,
so if I'm understanding correctly, that the administrative building is in this municipal building line, because it doesn't have a building and repair in its own budget, I would like to add $5,000 to that line, so that there's $10,000 under building and repairs, in case the administration office, or the town office needs to do anything, because it doesn't, that is not accounted for in its own budget, the way it is in the fire department, and public works building budget. Does that make sense?
Well, if it's not planned, if it's an emergency, then the board can authorize it. But if it's something like, if you're planning on spending $10,000, it should really be put in as a capital request.
I mean, my thought to what Heather's saying there, though, is emergencies cost more money now because of any sort of construction, so if you're budgeting for 10,000, in case a $10,000 emergency comes up, which could be, you can spend that pretty quickly, we might as well budget for a little bit wiggle room there as opposed to trying to move it around later. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we had talked about like the fact that the gazebo is like, it's caution taped off, and I see that alone eating up that $5,000. So then if there's anything that does happen in the in the town office, right? That, and I get it, we do
Yeah,
have an
no.
emergency
Right.
fund, right, but if we're trying to like budget,
Right, that's planned though, that should be kind of spelled out, like, hey, we're gonna spend, it's gonna, approximately, we're gonna spend $3,000 approximately on the gazebo this year. And that would be somewhat planned and you would incorporate that into the budget, but if it's emergencies monies, you don't necessarily have to fall in line within that budget, for lack of a words, line item, because you would be drawing it probably from, the general fund or something like that.
so everyone's comfortable with $5,000 for building and repairs for all buildings in town and structures other than the fire department and public works, because that lives in their own budget.
I'll just say this is the same line that I pointed out last meeting that seemed low to me for maintenance, especially knowing that it includes one of our 3 biggest buildings. So I would advocate for increasing that from a planning standpoint.
we did talk about last time upping that by 25%, I think.
I think we just talked about upping it, and Rich said, name a number.
Right. I thought
I
I
just
wrote
know
down,
that,
I
you
wrote
look at
down
the price
20.
of lumber
Yeah.
alone.
I wrote
No,
down-
it's expensive, yeah, there's no
It's-
question.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know
wrote
what-
down 25% when we had that discussion.
Yeah, I think from a budgetary standpoint, I mean, whether it's Jerry or maybe Calvin can speak to it, how they derive that number. Calvin's in charge of the buildings, you're saying it's maintenance. If they feel comfortable with it, then, I mean, it's hard to, they're the ones with the knowledge on what builds the number. We're just looking at a number.
Yeah,
So if
my
they
thought
want
on
us to
that is
do
if they're feeling like, oh, I don't wanna ask for too much, our voice now is saying, well, we think that you could ask for a little bit more, cause we understand the cost of doing business never goes down, so.
I can't speak for this year, but they're usually not not too shy about asking for too much.
Well, it's a little different format this year, but I would bring to your attention, the gazebo is gonna need probably about $5,000 worth of work. We're still working on getting numbers together, but I've been told, plan on, you can easily count on, that's gonna be expensive. And at the time, you can decide whether you wanna do it or not, or replace it, or.
Yeah, so is that, by that rationale, is that new information that's coming to light,
I
or
would
is that
say-
information that was prior to making this budget? I think is what we're all trying to figure out.
If you're gonna do, if it's that much,
Mhm.
which I didn't know it was gonna be that much, there's money in the municipal capital reserve that we can use to do those types of bigger repairs.
I'm not trying to split hairs, we can move on.
Yeah,
So I think it's a good point,
question.
and so I think when we get to the point, I think Jerry's right, that should come out of the reserve account.
and
So,
leave this number like it is.
Right.
we're not changing it.
It sounds like we're not changing it, is that a consensus?
I would leave this and take the money for the gazebo, if it's a plan and we're expecting 5,000, then we authorize up to 5,000 for the repair, of the municipal building reserve account, or whatever it's called, for repair of the gazebo.
I mean, I think one thing that might be good for further, looking further down the line is to just look at what, I don't know if you did this already, but traditionally, how much we've spent on these sorts of repairs. Look at that as a function of what the total budget was. So it's like, oh, that repair item is 1% of the annual budget and it usually covers, or 0.01% and it usually covers, and then just adopt that sort of approach.
I don't ever really remember seeing a building repair and maintenance line in the budget.
Yeah.
Right.
$1,000 when I started.
So,
Mhm.
so it's kinda new, so we're just sorta like, but you gotta do maintenance to the building, so you put it down in there and put 5,000 towards it, like, we're gonna have to do something with that office, we're switching people around and.
And that's, again,
You
these
know.
things here, these things, and I know like buildings that I am responsible for, replacing a door has turned into $6,000 before. So those are sort of the items that I think about from my experience and think that might as well go more than 5,000, but I'm agreeing with Heather on that one, so,
I'm good either way.
yeah.
So, I mean, Heather, to keep it moving, you could easily make a motion that you wanna increase that by $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and we can put it in a vote, and we can move from there, rather than, I see the logic in what everybody's saying.
We're kinda discussing without emotion,
Right,
so I
right.
see what you're saying.
And we can add that line 207253 to the administration line and put the 5,000 in. It's up to you.
Add a buildings and maintenance to administration, or move the whole
Yeah.
line?
No, not move the whole line, leave it,
Add a
in the
line.
line, add the line, add the 7253 line to the administration, put the 5,000 there.
So it's a bit of a compromise. Not even a compromise.
Yeah,
Which is what you wanted, which is what you was advocating for, okay.
Alright, I'll just make a motion. I move that we move the building repairs maintenance line under municipal buildings to administration and increase it to $10,000.
Got a second?
second for discussion, if we're, so is it gonna?
Okay, so I
Well,
got a second, okay?
Yep,
We have any discussion now?
yeah.
Alright, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was supposed to say second for discussion if I wanted to talk, I didn't realize that had to be a break in a sentence. So if we move that to administration, I don't think we should move it, I think we should add it. I
Yeah.
think it should live here and it should get added also, because we still have building repairs and maintenance for Eureka,
Right.
for the gazebo, for Runaround Pond. I think we need to have building repairs in the administration budget, because that building is obviously getting new buildings and, repairs and maintenance, but this category, there's still other town buildings that will need repairs and maintenance.
I would accept a friendly motion to just say add, change move to add.
Okay. Everybody? What do you
Say-
think?
Say that again? What are you changing it to now?
If we just changed it, alright, I'll just withdraw my motion to make it easier. I move we add a line to administration for buildings and repairs and add $5,000. keep
second.
5,000, yeah, so
Yeah.
in terms of discussion, my motion, the intent here is to keep the $5,000 in the municipal building, under municipal buildings for building and repairs, which includes everything that's not the public works or the fire department, but this would also add $5,000 to administration for their office buildings and repairs, so they would have a $5,000 budgeted for buildings and repairs, and then the other buildings in the totality would have 5,000. Does everyone understand my motion?
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
So that
Okay, so
changes
moved.
our
I gotta read it
administration
down. Move
budget
to
by
spend
$5
more.
grand.
Moved up.
To 471, 156.
Perfect.
Thank you for sticking with me through that, appreciate it.
All right, next, anything else on municipal buildings? On page 7, all right, go to assessing. Assessing, good, all right, telecommunications.
The only thing this isn't about the number, this is just about the name, and I don't know how difficult it is to change, but going forward, just for clarity's sake, if we could rename internet to service provider or Burgess, or however that, do you know what I mean? Because that,
That caught me off guard, like,
Yeah,
that's some expensive internet.
I don't know who it is, but
Yeah,
whatever,
fine.
yeah, or the service, like internet service
Right.
provide, you know, however that needs to get.
Internet provider,
Yeah,
there we go,
whatever, however it is,
okay,
just so that that is a little bit clearer.
all right.
Other than that, I'm fine with it.
Planning and codes,
Hold on one second, let me go back to my.
I just had a quick clarification question on planning and codes. The increase, and I don't wanna get into details of names or anything like that, so I'm just gonna say, the increase for staff wages is a reflection of a increase in hours?
For, part-time,
Yeah,
yes, 4 hours more.
okay, and then, yeah, I just wanted to clarify, increase in hours on an increase in
Yeah.
rate.
Right.
Right, no, not in consideration.
Jerry, the planning codes, the full-time staff wages, that used to reside in the admin budget, correct?
Yes.
I think, I'm fine with this, but I just think just for a little bit of clarity and, just for general ease for when it comes time for when this is presented, that if we have some type of notation of what that number was in fiscal year 2023 versus the budget for 2024, in line with this.
Yeah,
And just showing.
yeah.
it's
Just
increase in
showing.
We'll
hours,
just show
too.
it, 'cause-
That's it, just show
Okay.
it, that's all I'm looking for, just so it looks like, so we don't look like we're adding a $60,000 position, we're just
Right. We're just
moving it.
moving it.
Yeah, so a little
Yeah.
bit of
Because
italic wording or something of that nature, just to
Yeah.
give it a little clarity.
we talked about
Like
that,
previously in this budget, in this section.
we talked about that, when you start moving lines between departments, it makes the department look like it grew, and it really.
Yeah, there's a few
Really
examples of that throughout the budget.
Yeah, and I think this is like just a prime example, just to show like, hey, we're just moving this particular,
Yeah.
wage over into a more, specific category versus having it in the admin budget. And it just gives a little light and clarity to when people look at it up front.
Yeah. I have it in my notes here.
all right, we'll go on to fire department and safety. Questions, comments?
Nothing from me.
I have something if you don't, I just want. You
Go
ready?
ahead, Jerry, yeah.
So the animal control, the town's always gonna have an animal control, yes. So rather than have it, that all by itself, I would recommend that we just move that right into the administration, because it's a contract. It's not really belonging fire, it's not, they put it there because typically they're in the law enforcement safety side of the house, but we don't have that, so
to give you a little history, we put it there because we weren't always contracted. We used to have like a local bill that, monthly stipend to the town. And then it became such a headache when services were being rendered that we started contracting with Lisbon.
Yeah,
It would make it easier too. It's not gonna change any of the numbers, it won't change the administration line once again, but we'll leave it the way it is, but I recommend for coding and everything, and just keeping it more concise that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Okay, nothing in fire department, other public safety, we just talked about animal control, public works.
No,
Nothing public works, okay.
I have a comment.
Jerry, public works?
Again, with this one, with solid waste being its own thing, what I would recommend here is that you pull bulky waste out, always have that be an article, to ask people if they want it, and actually make your solid waste part of the, public works budget.
Yeah, cause we talked about this last time, cause if we sign a 5-year contract, we're then asking every year,
Right.
and we pay a contract we're already paid to.
And with tipping fees and you just don't know where they're gonna go, if you have 350 and we go over by 1,000, now you're either asking for it again at the next town meeting, or do a special town meeting, but if the public works budget they always have a little leftover, so if it's over, it can get covered. That's what you wanna try to do.
But you are saying, pull bulky waste out
Out.
of that, so that it still gets voted.
Exactly,
Okay.
unless I'm thinking that's what you wanna do, but it's
We
up to
have in
you.
the past pulled bulky waste.
Yeah.
Whether it's been a separate line item or not, it's always been a separate article.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you'd have to pull it out of where you have it here on the solid waste.
It would remain, but the hauling and tags would move to public works.
Are we on public works already?
No, we're on.
No,
Oh, I just saw that we went to the next line item,
no,
solid waste,
he's
that's
trying to
why.
pull it into public works,
Oh.
which is why we were still on public works, and he's bringing in that he'd like to move solid waste up into there.
Well, tags and hauling.
Hauling and tags.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had nothing to say on that one, I had some couple questions on the public works one, but as far
Yeah.
as the public, I'd add, since, I would add, I think trash always should be separate, because it's such a massive variable every year, that if you categorizing it into somebody's budget, I think it should be its own separate entity, that's just my personal opinion.
So what, if you still have stuff about public works, is it okay if we go back up?
Yeah, let's talk about solid waste
Because I have some
afterwards.
questions around the solid waste thing, but I don't wanna move on to that
No,
before he
let's,
gets a chance to ask
let's
his
finish
question.
with public works, and then we'll talk about solid waste afterwards, yeah. Go ahead.
Some of my questions were I just needed a refresher, for example, the electricity, the actual 9,000, budget this year was 8,000. But in fiscal year 2022 was 16,400, for a budget of 2,500, did the numbers just not translate? Probably, what am I missing there?
Well, I don't know what went on in 22 with coding and all that stuff, but we did the math this year for the electricity for public works, and it was just a little bit, well, there it is, there's 9,052, but some of this may have not been coded, so what I had staff do was take public works electricity bill, add up this year's total, and it was just under 8,000, so I made it 8,000.
Did Public Works get their light, was that one of the buildings that got their lights replaced?
No.
Public Works did.
And then,
So that's an actual number then.
Yeah.
okay, thank you. And then I had, this is trivial money, but the flagging service, that's been in there a couple of years now, and for the last few years, we haven't been able to get flaggers. Are we going on the expectation again this year, we're gonna be able to get them, might not be able to get them?
Well, I cut that, you'll see no dollars in there, just cut it.
Okay. You're right, you did cut it. I saw that it was, I misinterpreted that. My-
And so
my
when you,
apologies.
can I ask a question to follow up that? When you have to get flaggers, is that, and you're paying them, is that coming out of contracted services, or is that wages, like where?
You can't get them in this year, the price for them is so exorbitant that I would just use my own people.
Okay, thank you.
Before, they used to be cheap enough that it was worthwhile to have that done so we could keep working, but now it's in such an exorbitant amount that, I couldn't justify it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Then the other one that I had, and anybody can please feel free to cut me off here, I get a little worried on the equipments and repairs for PW, only because we've seen in the past that can add up very quick. And this is a much lower number than I've seen in years past, and I just wanna know, I know you got some new equipment and things of that nature,
But
but,
I'll explain to you that
Thank
that's
you.
not accurate. What Jerry wanted to do was break it into two parts, so if you look a little bit further down, you'll see equipment repair, and you'll see, Jerry wanted to break it down between vehicle maintenance and equipment repair, so there's two of them that total 120.
Yeah, I see that.
So we just kinda broke them apart and said,
Okay.
let's
No, I
see.
think those are good questions, cause that's the whole thing, that we've moved things around a little bit. so
Yeah, I
it's
think
a
that's
little
fair.
differently.
Yeah.
so if we could just do, like I said on the last one, just a couple italics there, so people can see, because at first, it looks like, whoa,
I know.
it just looks like either a mistake
Look
or
like an error,
under
yeah.
budgeting or an error, and I'd rather alleviate a lot of that discussion.
Right, so
So
you
you
really
want
went
some
from,
quotations on that?
yeah, so you really went from 111 up to,
Correct.
120, 130, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think, like Rich just said, like, if there's just italicized text, that might just say previously combined with
Well,
this or that, I think, yeah.
And the reason why I did that, and I've seen it in other municipal budgets, you got vehicles and you got equipment, they're completely two different.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a great
Right? So
idea.
just-
Yeah, no, I got no issue with that, it makes sense, cause I mean, they're completely different assets, I guess.
Right.
And my last thing, and I promise this is my last thing, is the liquid de-icer and the winter sand. We have a budget in there of 16 for the liquid de-icer and winter sand of 7. Where did the prior years go to? Cause we've always purchased those.
Yep. So we had liquid de-icer winter sand before.
Absolutely, always have. That's what I'm saying, like, so
Oh,
where are we at? What is this year looking like? I don't recall what they were in years past. It'd be nice to be able to reference that.
Oh, there's no number there. Oh, I see.
It's the same thing that's happening with the other thing, they're breaking it out so they can keep better track of it. It lived, I asked this question the last time, it lived in the other number, and they've differentiated it so that they can keep
What was
better
the
track.
other number?
What other number would
It
that
was
be?
living in the
So-
146.
No, they actually were always separate. On the trio report, you would see, and I think they were pretty much those same numbers. Last year, we used a trio.
See, I don't know what you would combine, I only ask because I'm not sure what you would combine it with, because those are winter maintenance items that can be, well, let's say flexible as far as state statute goes versus
So I guess,
combining it with something that potentially may not be flexible.
no, they were always, it's pretty much the same. Oh, but you're not, but he didn't put the prior year's numbers in there, I see, and I don't have that.
I'll get it to you here
Okay.
in just a second.
So it's nothing, that's all I got, thank you for the time.
That's a good question, because it all sounds like, what's this new $16,000 thing? That was what this is.
So like wasn't like your winter maintenance, did you have it all like combined sands? I'll find it.
Salt, sand, winter, de-icer, those were all separate.
And blades, salt, sand, de-icer and blades, I thought were all
All
separate.
separate, yeah.
Jerry, one other thing that you had said last meeting was that, you had broken out crack sealing
Yeah.
and
Yeah, you did that too.
road painting and striping, and so that might be another place to put an asterisk, that people recognize that those numbers are coming out of,
Paving,
yeah.
that was all on his paving.
So that was the original paving number.
That was broken down, yes. Yeah, that's probably just an oversight, I think he just didn't put those.
Hold on,
It's gonna be a learning curve just this first year with breaking things up a little bit like that.
Okay, can we have a board conversation about, the solid waste in the contract, in the situation with that?
Yeah, do we have anything else on public works other than what he's looking up right now?
Well, I rest personally, I think I asked enough, but.
Anybody else in public works? Right,
Um,
go back to public works in a second, solid waste.
so, if we're talking about whether or not we're gonna add that to the operational budget, because it's a 5-year contract, and every year, I understand Jerry's point, that every year we go to the town meeting, and we have to ask every year to fund that year of it, but we're doing a 5-year contract. And so I wonder if, when we put the question out, I went back and I looked at the way that I can't remember what the example was, but it basically showed maybe it was a bond for road paving.
bonds, yeah,
And
that's
so
what I'm
it
thinking.
showed, we're doing this,
Mhm.
and this is the schedule,
Right.
right? And so I wonder when we ask the question this year, whatever the outcome is of where this falls in the budget, that when we sign the contract, we're signing a 5-year contract. And to make sure that the town understands, we're signing a 5-year contract. I don't know what happens if in 2 years we decide we don't wanna be part of the contract anymore. I mean, to me, a contract is a contract and you fulfill it. So in my mind, if we are signing a 5-year contract, the town needs to vote to sign on to that 5-year contract. In my mind, it's not 1 year, this is like a debt service in my mind.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we can't do that, making everybody understand that this is a 5-year contract we're signing up for, and, along with the caveat, we've got a committee together for a longer term plan after that to take its place later. And then, yes, as the second, third, and fourth year, fifth year come, that just becomes a line item like any other normal warrant article that just extends like the example you make, the debt service payment or bond payments. I don't see why that can't happen on a yearly basis after that.
So to Rich's point, just so I understand, it sounds like what you're saying though is like, yeah, we have a 5-year contract, but they're telling you, this is what your per ton is gonna be or whatever, and that could vary year to year. And so is that kind of why it's been put on before, because we knew that there was some variability there? But at the end of the day, if at year 3 we vote and say, no, it's just been getting too expensive, I don't wanna do that anymore, we still owe them the next 2 years, so it's like, what happens in the scenario that the town votes, no, you can't pay the contract year 3, it's not like we can't pay the contract.
I think it falls, like, the board in itself is able to, enter into this contract. You're legally able to do that. One of the articles that'll be in the town warrant is to have the town pay its existing debts and services and so forth, however that wording is. And that kind of falls under that umbrella. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get that, so wouldn't we then just move the hauling and tags into public works, cause that's an existing debt and service? And then the bulky waste is the kind of thing we could vote on annually to decide whether we want or not?
You could always separate that. I think the only thing that you really is to be separated, in my opinion, is probably just the bulky waste. The
Yeah.
tags, if you're gonna do anything with the tags, just get rid of them. Only because, and I say that, and I'm not saying that just to be, off the rails here. Most people, when they allocate their trash in a 40-yard bin or whatever it might be, is not allocating it on 20 pounds. They're filling their bin and they're taking it out there. So you really don't know the weight limit. It's definitely not 20 pounds per tag or whatever it is.
40 pounds.
Or 40
Not
pounds,
40
yeah, exactly.
yard bin.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Dumpster
turkey
on
week,
the road,
those bags
it's
are a
like-
lot heavier than your average week. After Christmas, those bags, so I mean, the money and the
Yeah,
expense.
I
in there-
crushed my bag now and I got like 12.
Oh, of course you do, but that's what I'm saying. The money and the expense that you allocate towards printing tags and all that stuff, does it really, I don't think you can really put a number to it and quantify it, because nobody really knows. There's really no way to do it. All I know is we're signing a contract based on X amount of weight that we got rid of last year, irregardless of how many tags you spent. But the number that they base it on is what we threw away as a town.
Yeah, we don't vote on any other, it's not like we vote on a 5-year lease on year 3 to make the payment on the lease. So I just think it makes sense, like Jerry was suggesting, to maybe move this into part of the budget that's just kind of more of a fixed cost, even though it is slightly variable, and then just keep bulky waste and solid waste as a thing we vote on.
Yeah,
I mean, it
I
just
think
seems
it's-
weird to vote on paying a bill that you have to pay, you know?
Yeah, and the same thing, I could make that argument with the same thing with bulky waste. We tried the no bulky waste one year, and the town was very, now granted, the town changes every year, but I don't see it changing that dramatically in the next course of 2, 3, but the town was very, for lack of a better word, steadfast in their decision that they wanted bulky waste.
Yeah, we had
There
it,
was
we got rid
no-
of it.
There
We
really
got
wasn't
it back.
any, like, they were more upset than they were, that it was gone, that they paid for it. So that seems to be trash, bulky waste and trash, and from what I've seen and heard and comments that have come in over the years is, that's really not negotiable with the townspeople at this point in time.
So can we leave it in the just,
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
that.
We have to make a motion to move it to the operating budget.
Bulky waste too?
No,
So are you gonna vote on bulky waste every year?
I heard you
That's up to the
not.
select
I
board.
heard you not, I heard you not.
Yeah,
There
I
got
would
so
leave it
many
in there.
complaints
They-
that
yeah.
Pierre got voted down, we got so many complaints, we got so many
Yeah.
calls,
Just-
and then people came just to vote it in.
mhm.
So I think that gave you your answer.
And if you don't, some of that bulky waste, Calvin will be picking up on the side of the road.
How much is bulky waste, like $12,000?
Yeah, I remember the year we got rid of it, the next year
1%?
it was
It was a
6 mattresses now that
Yeah.
run around, there's, so,
There's always-
I mean, I'm fine with, I'll move to, and I'm the one that's gonna get yelled at the next meeting, but I'll make a motion to move solid waste into the operating budget that Jerry.
Second?
I don't know.
I don't think, we
I
don't
don't
think,
think
this is
we-
just, this is just
This is
something by
a
Jerry,
discussion,
and
yeah.
Jerry
Well, I
can do
guess what,
whatever.
the
Well, it
thing that
changes
changes
the
is we're no
number.
longer voting on bulky waste, we're just making that.
Well, not even bulky waste, it changes the public works number to adding that, oh no, total public works, no it doesn't, you're right, Josh. That's right. So our recommendation for total public works is the 1.8 million unless, if we're not changing anything else. And that becomes part of,
But by moving it, we would be removing the vote on the bulky waste day, correct?
No,
And it-
because you,
We just
it
wouldn't be
still,
pulling it out.
it still comes in, you still have to vote on the public works budget, right?
Right, but you're not voting on bulky waste separately, because we've always, the last 3 years, we've had this separately.
So what
You
it-
have bulky waste day, yeah.
what it does.
That we can vote on separately, no matter where it is. It doesn't matter where it is in this document, which is created just.
If we
for
don't
us
need
to
to
see.
vote, we can save our time and just let Jerry do it, I'm fine with that.
Can I just
I'm
make
just trying to
one,
keep the wheels
I make
moving.
one point about this, is that when we get to town meeting, the article will say, total public, it'll say
Yes.
public works budget, right?
Mhm.
And that's not that number can be moved depending on the way that it's worded to go up or down,
Mhm.
right? And so with bulky waste not living there, that allows that number to be changed in a different way. Do you see what I'm saying? Because people don't have this level of detail to look at. They get just the one,
Right, and they're just
Line.
saying, by voting on public works, you're including that.
and I'm in favor of it all living together in one thing. I'm just saying that's the difference between pulling it out versus not pulling it out, is that you don't have the ability to change that
Separate
one
it.
line, right?
I-
Because it goes as one entity.
I don't necessarily disagree, I would, other than the fact, I think to lump it into public works, total overall budget is not necessarily the correct thing to do. I think it should
But
live on.
that's what we're doing.
I know,
Oh, okay.
I think it should live on its own.
Solid
And it should
waste
be,
in
and
general.
it should be transparent, the town, public works, because there's people out there that are scrutinized about public works, and now you're gonna increase their number, where this is gonna show a separate number, and it's itemized, so it's not public works, so there's no, Calvin's budget went up by X because we added it in there,
So
so.
are you suggesting to pull solid waste out of public works?
I think it
and
should
make
be its own separate item.
section?
Can I ask Jerry a question?
Yeah.
Is that fine? Jerry, is your concern around this, around the fact that it's a 5-year contract, and if we don't have it as part of the operating budget, there is the potential for people to vote it down, and we've signed a 5-year contract?
That's one concern. The other concern is that we end up going over the solid waste budget. And when I got here in 22, that seemed to be the case.
Okay,
But then we didn't really know until we got the audit back, and it wasn't the case. So like I said, if you.
to avoid the situation where we have to go back and ask for more money because we went over
Right.
that year's
Right, if you
amount.
Well,
don't,
yeah, but I wouldn't wanna hit Calvin's budget up because we're on waste either. Like, I wouldn't want him to have to absorb that. So if you put it in his line item and then you go over, you're basically saying you gotta take it out of his budget to cover it, rather than come back to the town and say, guess what, you threw out too much crap. It's really what it comes down to. I'd rather not, I'd rather keep it separate
That's up to you.
and put it down on its own line item. And whether we separate bulky waste or not, I'm in agreement, leave bulky waste in. I like bulky waste, but that's my personal opinion, but, you know, leaving that, as part of the overall plan, if everybody uses it, it is very useful, saves Calvin money in the long run.
So leaving it like Calvin's budget would be up 8.6, putting in there, he'd only be up 5.5.
Yep, well, he'd be, well, your 1.454 million for Calvin would be his total, right?
Yeah, that's up, he's up 8.6 with just that.
Right.
You add solid waste to it, because it's down, it's now 5.5%.
Well,
How does that make sense? I don't understand how that comes, how does that work? How do you go from 8% by adding $365,000 onto something and take it down? You can't go backwards there.
Well, 8.6 minus 5.3 is,
Well, I get that.
Yeah, but that's
Portion.
that's 5.3% of a much smaller
right,
yeah.
amount, yeah, so, yeah. It doesn't add that way.
His budget, and that's why I'd like the transparency.
Yeah.
Now we see that Public Works, its separate entity from the trash, is up a total overall of 8.6 annually. And it's not because of bulky waste, and it's not because of whatever other thing happened to Public Works, it's just, they're up, they're at an 8.6, could be labor, could be healthcare, I'm not,
right.
whatever. But this just gives people a little bit more transparency, and it breaks out the numbers, so we're not convoluting the numbers. And it causes,
But
it's just too hard to follow.
I think that still raises the previous point that the solid waste is a 5-year contract, and we're voting on whether we wanna
What are
continue
we
to
on
pay
now,
a
a 3-year?
contract.
We're
It's the
down
same
in
as,
June,
No, but what
Yes.
are we just coming out of, a 3-year?
1 year extension.
It was a 3-year with a 1-year
But it was a 3-year with a
extension.
1-year, that's what I'm saying, like, we've done a 3-year before, the difference between a 3-year and 5-year. I mean, it's, a
Right.
contract's a contract for the town.
right, but it just seems kinda silly to vote to pay your lease every year when you have to pay it. Like, if you have to pay your 5-year, every year you have to pay the contract, why are we voting year 3? Hey, do we still pay our fixed bills this year?
Can I speak to this point? I've had my hand up for a while.
I'm sorry, Heather.
So I think I would like to propose a happy medium of, I understand the point of view of keeping it separate, but I do recognize Jerry's concern and share it around a 5-year contract and going to the voters year after year to approve something that we're part of. And so, back to the very first thing that opened up the conversation, I think that when we make our warrant article, we need to establish that while we only have the cost for this year going forward, that the town understands we're voting for a 5-year contract, that their vote to approve this is to approve a 5-year contract, and then the amount goes on the warrant, and if people wanna keep it separate so that it's, you know, very distinguishable between the Public Works Department budget and solid waste, that's fine, but I think, you know, to speak to Jerry's point, that to go back year after year and ask for permission again after we're signing a 5-year contract, that doesn't make a lot of sense, that feels like a debt payment.
I think I'm there, I agree.
I think we all agree on that, but moving it into Public Works isn't solving
Yeah,
that
I think it's
problem.
a separate issue.
It's not
but-
solving
Yeah.
the problem.
Yeah,
It's not solving the problem.
Yeah.
It's just making it more, it's
I'll
just making it
withdraw,
less
I
transparent.
withdraw my motion.
Than it
We
was.
haven't been talking about it for a while.
contract started, we're at.
June 30th.
I guess I don't really personally understand the difference. I understand it from a length of time standpoint, but entering into a contract versus 3 years versus 5 years.
Well, we didn't get to choose the 3, they said they're only offering a 5-year contract.
Right, and that was the same time what happened when we did the 3-year too. They said we're only offering a 3-year and we'll give you another option. So there, and my guess is next year, you know, if there's more, they need more capital.
Only offering lifetime contracts.
Yeah, they might offer you, the next time might be a 7-year, and then after that, it might be a 10-year. I mean, you just never know, but I mean, the board has the ability to function on the town and take on this debt if they think it's in the best interest, and overall, the town is gonna vote on it. It's been pretty clear over the years that this is not necessarily a 1-year option for trash. So,
mean, I think it goes into the presentation to the town, at the town meeting. And if you're not there, it's your fault. If you're there and you don't get it, you have an opportunity to ask questions.
But how
I
do
think we're spending a lot of time on things that are made clear at the town meeting.
Right.
So how do we address Jerry's concern though, of the, we're voting to enter into a 5-year contract and then voting to pay our bill every year?
Well, it gets presented at the next town meeting as this is a bill we have, and there's no option but to pay it, or
Right.
we face the consequences from the contract, which
That's what
could
that
be
article's on
whatever.
for.
That's what the
Uh,
other,
and so you voted on it, we've signed it, because this is our only option.
It's no different than entering into a 15-year debt service to buy a public works building or anything like that. I don't see what the
Yeah, we're
difference
still
is.
voting every year to pay the,
Right.
to pay the debt, so.
Right, it's just broken out and
It's just
shown
broken out
exactly
so
what
you
it
can
is
see
year
it.
by year, exactly.
Right, just like I wouldn't want the public works building, the capital purchase of the building per se, or a truck, in every year's budget. I wouldn't.
Right.
I'd rather see it separate, and that's what this would do, this would put it every year in somebody's budget. I just don't see why we would do that, just keep it separate, like it's always been.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah, all right,
okay,
make it a separate.
I also think that's a decision that's really up to Jerry, but it's kind of a budget, right? To an extent, so
It doesn't,
I think we're-
it really doesn't matter, it just, you've got a 5-year contract and you're gonna vote on it every year, that's fine if that's what you're doing for transparency wise, it just didn't make a lot of sense, I mean, it's smaller than Calvin's paving line, and we don't vote on what roads he's paving every year, so, what difference does it make, right? I mean, it's the same thing, so if you wanna vote on it every year, we'll leave it out.
Loan versus split.
Right,
I answered my own
Okay.
question before I
I think
asked
the
it.
difference is
Thank
we
you.
don't have to pave roads every year, where we do have to have trash every year.
right.
Well, we
You
don't have to, we choose to.
You don't have to.
I think it's pretty obvious that we're gonna have to have trash every year.
But you also have to pay your roads, all right?
There's
Especially-
All right.
I can tell you many years we didn't pave roads around here.
Okay, so our recommendation for the public works budget is the 1.4 number that we
One
see here.
point 454,228,
And then,
and pull solid waste out separately.
right, but as one entity at 364.
Yep,
Because
one entity at
As this board,
364.
the consensus is that we want bulky waste to live in that same line as one article.
One
Yeah, I
out.
think it'd just be an article, and you put both those numbers in the article, and if somebody wants to say, let's alleviate that, and they got the guts, and they think they can get the hands to go up, so be it.
So we just cut Calvin's budget, $364,000 for him. We put it somewhere else.
Well, sometimes,
Well-
yeah,
You can look at that way if you want.
we increased Calvin's budget by this rationale.
Yeah.
He went from 5.5, now he's up to an 8.8.
Yeah.
Okay. Good, everybody?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Page 12, culture and recreation, parks and recreation, let's see here.
That's going away, right?
Yeah, this is all
Yeah,
gone.
that's all gone, that's all gone.
And the same- this whole page is gone.
Community center is gone, right?
That's all been moved
And
elsewhere.
other community services.
I think we got supplemental.
Yes, you
information.
did, so you'll have to look at that, see what that 16,100 makes up.
Yeah. And I'm,
Okay.
So, general assistance, that 600 is not listed on that, so we're just looking at the 16,100. Unless you want to increase the general assistance, that's always been 600, I left it there.
sorry, I didn't follow you, so what,
So under, this is community services, and this is the
no,
detailed
okay,
information
the
about it.
second
But
line
that,
item.
this detailed information does not include general assistance, which is its own line item there. This is just breaking that 16,100.
Right. It's
Down
showing you
for
what
us.
makes up that
Breakdown of it.
16,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, that's what I was missing.
and so, just
So-
for my clarification, when we accept this, we're saying that we're earmarking that 16,100 for the following: Durham Youth Baseball, Freeport Scholarship, Snowmobile Club, and Vets Generator. But the town is only voting on this number itself, so it's not like the town is gonna sit there and vote. We do want
Right,
Derby
you just
baseball,
voted
we
on that
don't want.
bottom line number, yeah.
And so this is
Well-
right now the moment where we're
We gotta
making
show
a
them
decision.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
you
somebody in the
So
way,
someone could do a
Yes.
Would be
motion
an
on the
open-
floor and say, I wanna turn 16,100 into, 1,500, because I wanna remove snowmobile club.
Right, it
Okay,
could.
so that will be, the supplement will be provided on.
It should be, yes.
and the way the article is worded is what allows people to make a motion on the floor to change the dollar
Mhm.
amount. So if this board agrees that that should in fact be the case, then that we would word the article appropriately, that people would be able to change it based on those figures and not just the total number.
do we actually put the values in there in the article? or
I
just
would
that
be
they- or
used
just
to,
the-
when it would be
just the
like,
subjects?
I can't think of what the breakouts were,
Yeah, I
when we
didn't
used to
bring my-
donate to different organizations, it showed like $500
To
for
this, to that,
aging,
okay.
I don't remember what it is, and so I do
Yeah,
think that
no,
level of detail is
You're 100% right,
Yeah,
yeah,
so as long
there
as
was
it
always a
breaks it out.
detailed
Yeah.
explanation of what that total
So
consisted
that,
of.
then this would be the detail right there.
That's typically in the book. like,
Yeah,
right on
it
the
is,
line.
yeah, no, I.
Okay,
Okay,
so are we good with the 16,700 number based on this detail that we have here?
yeah, I'm good with that.
Yes, it's-
Everybody, any other questions? Yeah, okay, okay,
So those are the only people that are here.
The only thing I reserve on that is depending on what we come up with for the church. That number, in theory, that, there's a possibility that number might have to be in there.
Oh.
I
I thought Jerry put that number elsewhere. in the
Yeah,
budget.
it got put into the Union Church
Right.
reserve account, and then the one is whether or not to allocate.
Yeah,
So we would vote to raise that in the Union Church account, and then also vote to,
right, but I think what I was getting at is depending on how we as a board saw that, for example, if we say this passes a straight face test to, this is gonna be for public use, right? If we can't come up with that collectively, then we could put it in this as a donation.
I see what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Because it's gonna be hard, straight face, at least in my opinion, to say, a building with no parking, a building with no egresses, or not enough egresses, a building without water and sewer, et cetera, is gonna be for public use, and that money can be based on Jack's interpretation of the law. So we might have to incorporate it in this, which I think is the cleaner way to go.
So you're
Yeah,
saying
because
take
this
it
doesn't-
out of the $10,000 transfer, whatever that page was, not
It's
the.
turning it from a cap, it's turning it into a donation.
It's turning it into a donation rather than a public service, money going
Yeah.
towards a public service.
It's nuanced.
Because I
but
don't,
prob-
I
might be
don't
necessary.
think,
This here, so instead of having it come out of additional use of fund balance,
Yeah.
maybe take the 10 out of there and put it over
I
here.
think you will be, I think, in my opinion, you'll be asking to put that back into the general and then ask for a donation under this category to give to them upon them accepting, because based on Jack's interpretation, I don't see how you meet public criteria with that specific building. If we're being
So
honest.
can I just extend this a little bit further? If we're making recommendations to the budget committee, and this is the first time that we've talked about this
Right.
way, right?
Yeah.
That, if we were going to go that route, which is a bigger conversation,
Absolutely.
right, then we're making this recommendation on this, but could completely change that, and I know we get one more shot at the budget, but I also think there's something where if you make a substantial change, it then has to also get kicked back to them.
It should.
Be, right,
I'm so
and so I just wanna
proud.
make sure that we're allocating time for that, if that's the case, then that's all fine and good, I don't wanna go past this quickly,
Right.
and then screw up the timeline to miss being able to come back and address that, if this is the way that people think that we should handle this.
Yeah, it's just the way I read Jack's and when I read this, it's just, for me, based on his interpretation, and I'm gonna refer to my buddy to my left here, but it would be hard to pass that's gonna be a public, we're giving that money for public use. You know, but it's very easy to say we're doing it as a donation. If we put it back into the general fund and then we give it, I think it's cleaner and I think it.
Well, it's in the
Are we
general
put-
fund now.
Oh,
Quick question
correct,
here.
but
Are we
we
putting
can give
the-
this,
Cart before the horse, though. 'Cause I think we're gonna be able to have another crack at the budget if we
I think
then
we
talk
can
about
have
the
a
draft
discussion
union.
about Eureka first.
Yes,
Well,
the
yeah.
Union Church.
Yeah, the Union Church, excuse me.
So are you making a motion that we move that now into the donation account?
No, that's not what I said,
I'm just-
what I'm saying is, I just wanna, like I said, I'd like to just make a note that I think we should think about that when,
Yeah.
as we progress forward, that number also might be here because of the fact, like the way Jack outlined how those monies have to be spent.
Yeah, I follow you, yeah.
I think that this location would be a cleaner approach,
Mm-hmm.
a more
It
legal
should-
approach
yeah.
than the other one.
Changes the bar that needs to be passed.
Yes.
Are you catching all of that so you can like have that conversation with the budget committee? and
No,
then-
you're gonna explain it.
Okay,
I thought I was talking about
okay. Okay, so we're still at 16.7 because we're not doing any of that right now, but
Right.
I do
Yep.
think that that was an important part
Good
of to
conversation.
make, so thank you. The debt service, that's one of those ones, we don't have any choice, we just go by.
Say that again?
The debt service is the next thing, and that's not an option, so we just, that's our number.
Well, capital expenditures is 0. Debt services, that is what it is. Assessments and fixed costs.
That's an estimate, right?
It's
We
an
don't know
estimate.
those numbers yet.
We don't know those
Yeah.
yet.
Abatements and, Dan, I think we're done.
Yeah, that just brings up the other finances, which is
Right.
where I know the Union Church has been added to, and that's kind of lends the discussion that Rich was just leading.
So, go ahead, Ray, say something.
Well, I was gonna say, if we're done with that, then I would go back to the fund balance and recommend that if we added the $5,000, the buildings and maintenance, we included an additional 5,000 to the 445 allocated out of the fund balance to make that a total of 450,000. So that we continue to keep the budget flat.
I agree with that.
Still my thought.
So for anyone who didn't catch that on page 1,
That'll be on page 1.
almost at the bottom of the page where it says additions to use of fund balance, and the current number is 445,000.
Yep.
We're recommending to change that to 450,000.
To reflect the increase in the maintenance
Maintenance of
cost of
buildings.
5,000.
So here we have well, we're gonna talk about this, right? This transfers out number, that number is reflective of capital improvement, correct? Okay, so we're not gonna talk about that number yet because we have to go through all of that.
Yeah.
We haven't done that yet, and then we'll come back and talk about that as a
We
number.
haven't touched capital yet.
Right,
Yep.
okay, but that's what this number represents, and we're gonna talk about that now. I'm assuming, I'm not saying. I'm
That number
suggesting.
represents how you cover the capital we're about to talk about.
Okay, so that number we don't need to know yet because we haven't had a discussion about it.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, based on what you have in front of you, that number would go up by 5,000 as we just noted. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Your capital reserve requests.
So, yeah, we diving right into the details now of the other finances.
I had one question about, the public works equipment trailer.
Okay.
I feel like I remember a conversation about the fire department giving public works a trailer. Is that, am I remembering that accurately?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And
A
so,
smaller trailer. It's not a large equipment trailer. This trailer here is a trailer that hauls around an excavator or. a piece
I'm
of
sorry,
equipment.
okay, thank you for
They're two
explaining.
different types of trailers.
Yep, I understand now,
Yeah.
thank you, I
Yeah.
wasn't,
Whole
thank you.
different world of trailers.
Okay, got it. Okay. Ready to hear, what are we doing, we're just reading?
I would like to hear before we vote and have a real discussion on this, if there's a need for, well, let me rephrase that, there is a need for repairs at the Eureka Center. And if Calvin is saying there's about $25,000, does that include, the budget has the 9,130 out of the ARPA funds. Is that over and above, is that, and that, based on the discussion I had earlier with Jerry, it sounded like that was for, the propane heaters,
Could be, yeah, it's 9,000, whatever that number is,
130.
30 could go towards the Eureka Center. There's a lot more need in the Eureka Center
So
than
there's some
9,000,
still
so
on
it could go towards.
And,
And then-
and so is that, are those funds, the additional funds that are going to be needed? Are those indicated in this budget at all, or are those new numbers, and so that's new to us tonight, that's something that we should consider? And since I see you shaking your head, I'm gonna assume it's new numbers, and so I'm gonna ask, do those numbers indicate safety concerns? Or ways for us to save money on that building over the long run?
So, year after year, they ask for money to fix the doors at Eureka Center. I guess we put the money in there, it's been spent on other things. So, I'm not sure. The balance is what, 2,700 in the Eureka Fund, I think?
It's right in here, it's right, hold on, I'll tell you, it's on the last page of your budget.
3719.
And so, I've been working on the doors, getting the numbers. The number was staggering to me, so I had to go back even yesterday over the numbers again. And sure enough, confirmed they are accurate. To replace just the hardware on the doors, the crash bars and the locking mechanisms for it being a public building, is $9,300 just for the hardware. The doors are $4,500 to $5,500 for the doors, and with,
How many doors?
three. So, well, two of them are 4,500 apiece, and one's 1,000, so it's 5,500, 20 for, they're 4,500 for the two double doors, 1,000 for the single door. You're up to about 15, and then with labor to have them put in, and unknowns like rot, or that leaves you $5,000. A budget number for that's $20,000. And was just given this.
And there were also foundation or something issues as well, right?
Foundation issues, I have a report on that, and that's gonna be a much bigger question. The contractor says we could do nothing for 3 years or so, and nothing's gonna happen. The building isn't going anywhere, so we could deal with that in a bigger, that's a much bigger picture. But to get the doors done, and they're all rotten and not closing, I mean, one day the doors were wide open because they're being held shut with wire and, so the doors need to be done, that's $20,000. The heat,
Yes,
the
that's-
estimate to replace the heater, last year the pipes froze because we have a heat pump, that's the only source of heat. Nobody recommends having that as your only source of heat. To replace the two heaters that are there, 79, so $8,000.
So that's a total of 28,000, right?
Yep.
And so how much is the estimate you got for the foundation?
Well, there are many options on that, but that,
Well, can you give me a range?
I mean, to fix the wall, the repair what's there, if you decide to go that route, there's an option of putting a new 4-foot foundation behind the building and sliding it onto a solid, complete foundation, whereas what we have now are a combination of posts and stones and partial little basin up the middle.
I'll tell you what I'm looking for is if this is a 2 or 3 year, something that needs to happen in the next few years,
Okay.
which it sounds like it is because of safety issue.
Mhm.
I don't want us to come back in 2 years and say, we need $100,000 or else, we're gonna shut this building down. Because it's not used every day, but it's used. And so if that's something that needs to happen, then I think there needs to be some reserve, something added to that reserve account. And I think it needs to happen, and I think right now, I will tell you, I think that 28,000 needs to be set aside, because that's, well, it could be safety issues, with the frozen pipes, the doors and all of that, I think that's important. and it needs heat, and I think that building needs to be used. And so what would be
Well, probably a bigger discussion than we're prepared to have now,
but just a number.
to fix the wall that's currently falling in, and there again, there are many options. One is using the existing granite. If the Conservation Commission or Historical Society wants to leave the original granite, it would look better than using the concrete blocks. Would be 20 grand to fix that wall and use the existing granite. Another option would be to repair it using concrete blocks, would be 50, actually it's a little bit cheaper, 15 grand to use concrete blocks along the 136 side. Wouldn't probably as fit, it wouldn't be as aesthetically pleasing for a building in the Historical Society. And then to regrout in the base section of the building that has a basement there, is just water pouring between the stones and all the sand and gravel from outside pouring into the basement, running down through the building. It's $4,000 to regrout all of that with the proper concrete to make that, seal it off. The other option, so you're looking at either 20 and 40, you're either looking at 24 or 19.
So I'm up to $50,000.
The other option would be to put a full foundation behind the existing building and slide the building back, and that's 24.5 for the foundation and 45 to move the building. So if you wanted to go that route, you'd be, so the question is, do we fix the basement that's there and not have it on a solid permanent foundation? Parts of it are on posts, parts of it are sitting on rocks, parts of it are, so I guess that's a discussion, the board would have to decide which way they wanna go with that.
Hang on one second, Heather?
Well, he can,
You wanna
if you're not
finish,
done, go ahead and finish.
last slide.
The discussion we had previously that wasn't well received, but it's part of the historic commission's mission is for them to look at, has anybody from the town gone and say, hey, you have an obligation for a building owner in this district to help look for funding. Has anybody done that? And if not, I think we set some aside, but I think that someone should do that as well.
I think Jessica had information about or Jerry, what Josh just asked.
The building isn't really in the historic district.
It's not under any historical
Okay,
restrictions.
thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask my,
Yes.
thank
go
you,
ahead.
so I have a couple of things. On page 7 of 15, I think when we had our last discussion, electricity represented electricity for the Eureka Center, which the actual, no. There was something about the heat and the propane. When you're talking about replacing the heaters, what are the heaters? Are they gonna be propane heaters?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and we have no money in that line, so that's something that we have to consider if we are gonna have a conversation about replacing the heaters, and then we funded no propane. Okay, and I think the electricity bill for the Eureka was up substantially because the heat pumps aren't working properly, or because that's the only heat source, and
That's
so
your
they're
only heat
running
source,
like
correct.
crazy.
Correct.
Is that correct?
So, yes, and you're leaving them on 70.
Can you show
all
me,
winter.
can you tell me where the electricity, I'm trying to figure out
What's that?
where does the electricity live for Eureka in this budget?
Municipal buildings.
Okay. Okay. When we get to the point where we're talking about where this stuff is gonna come from, can everybody go to 15 of 15? In our recreation reserve, we have $23,000, $23,742. In our telecommunications reserve, we have $83,981. And so those are restricted, correct? Am I using the right word? Those are restricted fund balances. And we would have to ask the town to vote to either spend or consolidate or move them. We don't do this the way that we used to do this, where we would apply the telecommunications reserve to the telecommunications budget. Same with the recreation reserve, we don't have a recreation thing anymore, now we have community services, right? And so I would like for the board to consider pooling, we would have to ask for a vote to do it, go to town to ask for a vote, pooling those two numbers and moving them to Eureka Capital Reserve to be able to, with a long-term plan, maybe not a super long-term, if like some of these things are emergent, that doesn't change anything about the mill rate, the tax, you know, none of that, because that money's just sitting there right now in a way that we're not currently using it the way that we have in the past. And so the Eureka could get fixed, all of these things could happen, and those monies, that money that the town's already voted for and exists in these accounts would then go into an account where we can use it versus just sitting there. Something for everybody to consider.
I mean, whether that happens, I was gonna suggest that we set aside the $54,000, less than $9,130 that's been set aside as ARPA funds.
Where are you seeing the ARPA fund number? I don't
The
see that.
bottom, look down, the proposed ARPA.
Where?
Something
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going off of this proposed ARPA, I didn't see that there. Okay, thank you.
And take that money, I was gonna suggest from the reserve account, and which would put us back close to the 500,000 that we initially started with at our last meeting. Because to me, this building has a lot more use for the town than the Union Church. And as much as I would love to, I can't justify spending this money on the Union Church. I think it can be justified for use on this building that is being used on a weekly basis. And so that would be my recommendation, is to set aside essentially the $45,000 to put into the Eureka, capital reserve account and get those repairs done as soon as possible. Because I also think they're gonna start going up, and every year we're gonna look at an increase.
Is that a motion?
Sure.
I just wanna make sure I'm following you before we go there. So, ARPA left over at the end of this would be, or at least proposed to be $44,630.
Which would leave zero, that's the total proposed ARPA usage for the 3 different projects, which would leave zero in the ARPA account.
Spending ARPA down.
Which is what, it doesn't need to be spent, but it needs to be allocated.
It does need to be allocated, I get, yep.
And so I would take that 9,000 out of the 54. I said 45, maybe 50 is a better number, just to be safe, out of the reserve account, to the Eureka Capital Reserve account, and, specifically allocated for those projects that aren't in that 9,000.
So you're making a motion to increase the budget by $50,000 to cover Eureka expenses with that money coming out of our,
Reserve account.
coming out of our fund balance.
I like my idea better.
Well, I just don't know if there needs to be more discussion or what.
If that's the motion, I'll second, and then we can
I know.
discuss.
Second, let's have
Yeah.
a discussion.
Cool, so I'll second
Got a
it.
second? Discussion? Rich?
I just, only because this has happened many times over the years, just caution the board on allocating specific money for a specific year to get something done, only to be let down that you can't get it done, whether it's because the resources of the town, contractors available to do it. So when you earmark ARPA funds, I think you'd be better served if you take those ARPA funds, reserve them, and if you do get the project up and running, just call a special town meeting and utilize it, but if you, once you earmark them, then,
I think they just have to be allocated, they don't have
once
to
you
be spent.
allocate them or earmark them, it's allocated for something specific.
Right,
And you can just be cautious, because that's happened so many times over the years.
The other problem with ARPA is you fund the whole project with it, you can't just can't fund it with another source. So if you get, if it becomes 60,000 instead of 50, then you can't just add to the till.
I think that we're not as much of a concern here, because if we earmark it for land use codification, we already know that the person who came in said like they're booking out far in advance, but it's earmarked and we've decided as a community that that's what we want. So it kind of gives us, that's a little bit of the strength of it, is rather than saying, oh, we allocated that for this, but it took the person 2 years to get here and we have to go back and all that. This is saying, this has been allocated for that, even if it takes them 2 years to get here, we've got that codification money set aside, correct?
Jerry, what is the time frame on the ARPA that it has to be spent, not
26.
26?
Yeah, so it gives us 2 years.
But I
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
thought that, right, but we have to be allocated by this,
You have to obligate it, yeah.
by 2024.
And
So
then
this
in
is the
terms,
town
in
meeting.
terms of actually purchasing the dispatch stuff for the fire department, that's a matter of making a purchase, not getting a contractor. So if we allocate.
That's easy, that's easy
and
for
that's-
ARPA funds.
That's the lion's share of the
Yeah.
ARPA funds right there. My only question about the Eureka upgrades is, so the $9,000, $9,130, which is for the Eureka Center, is for one particular task. But to Joe's point, you can't fund, the ARPA funds have to pay for something in its totality, so can you just pay for that one portion of that and then do the rest of the building?
I think you could do, for example, Kelvin said, potentially he wants to put a secondary source of heat in there that's gonna cost approximately $9,000, so you have, whatever, what was that, wasn't it close to $9,000?
9,130, yeah.
You earmark that 9,100 for that secondary source of heat, and only that secondary.
Yeah, that's fine,
source.
yeah, so, I understand your concern, but I think that
I think you
No,
find
this is
everywhere
not
else,
as
I'm
much
just
of a
saying using it
concern
for a
with-
broad,
yeah.
just a broad stroke on a building is where my concern is.
Jerry would like to say
Yeah, I
something.
just wanna clarify, so in ARPA funds, you can't use any other grant money, but you could raise any money you want to help with, spend with ARPA, it doesn't have to be, like, if you have a $15,000, you could use 9,000 to help pay for that, as long as you're not using any other grant money for that project.
I didn't think that's how it was explained.
I'm almost like pretty sure that's the case.
I don't recall, it seems like it's been like 10
Because
years
then,
since I.
because if that were the case, you'd have to have something specifically, a project break down to the penny, and how often does that happen?
What you're saying makes sense, cause
Right.
if it's grant for money to ARPA, you're matching federal money with federal grant.
Right,
You can't match
You can't do that.
feds to feds, you know,
Right.
in most cases.
But if we use it for the heat source,
Goes away.
this is all null and void,
Right,
right?
no, I agree,
And then
yeah.
ARPA spent if
That
we
I
do it
agree
this
with.
way.
I think it's better to, sorry, real quick, I think it's better to allocate, if ARPA needs to be spent by 26, it's better to allocate it now in 24 than try to wait to do it at 25 and then.
I agree with that, just specifically,
Yeah.
for a specific task
Mhm.
or upgrade.
I mean, I
That's all
think,
my argument is.
I know we're talking about the Eureka upgrades as a whole, but if we're talking about ARPA, that looks good to me.
Can people chime in on thoughts about what I'm saying about the recreation reserve and the telecommunications reserve? And moving that into, by vote at town meeting, into the Eureka capital reserve, so that when contractors are available and when those things could happen, that money would be there and readily available,
So just to clarify,
versus raise.
you're asking to do the same thing as Josh, just populate that account, you just wanna do it differently, rather than taking it out of the fund balance, reallocate existing money?
Well, it is technically in the fund balance, it's just
Yeah.
already in a restricted account, versus raise the money to put into. Are you, if that number's not raised, that number's transferred.
And these aren't in the fund balance, fund
I was
balance.
gonna
Oh, they're not,
Fund
okay.
balance is, yeah.
Okay, so, to spend money out of a reserve account, does the board have the ability to do
Yes.
Yeah,
that?
that's,
Okay.
that's where
I was just
I'm
asking a
more in
question.
favor of Josh's approach. Cause that keeps money in reserve accounts for future needs. And this is taking money out of the fund balance to make an improvement that I think has a lot of value for the community, because the Eureka Center is the place that gets used weekly, you know,
So
Girl
how
Scouts
do
use
you
it, other meetings
foresee
use it.
using recreation reserve and telecommunication reserve when we don't use that the way that we have always done that made those accounts exist to begin with? So what used to happen is what the warrant article would say, telecommunications budget, $47,000. We were voting to transfer $47,000 out of the telecommunications reserve to pay for the telecommunications budget. We don't do that anymore. So now we have this money that's sitting there that's not getting allocated to anything. And so what I'm saying is, transfer that money by vote into the Eureka Center reserve where it would get spent as needed for the building.
And there's nothing else in the community that we would use telecommunication reserve funds for?
Well, we have it in the past, I'm not sure.
Well, I'm not saying what we have in the past, I mean, like, what's the opportunities? If the money's, well, I don't wanna say bond paid for, but if the money's there and this doesn't require us to raise.
Yeah, telecommunications for years, Heather's right on a lot of that, but a large portion of the telecommunication budget is derived from franchise fees from cable provider. I don't know how that transpires now, I have to defer to Jerry, but that's about right, Mitch, is that your recollection?
Oh, maybe, no, yeah,
Yeah.
that's an accumulation of franchise fees.
It was typically the accumulation of franchise fees, so we weren't really necessarily raising, we were just utilizing the funds that we would get from whatever it is, Suscom, Xfinity, whatever.
But it's in a restricted account, so there's limitations as to how it can be spent.
I don't know about, I couldn't answer that clearly, I just know that it was always used for, a lot of it was always used for our telecommunications budget and funding that.
I can speak on that. So the definition, if that's the right word, of telecommunication has broadened over the last half dozen years. So telecommunication used to mean the equipment that we use to broadcast over our community channel. Now it's been broadened so that the money's used for any ways that we communicate information to the town. We consider
So-
telecommunications.
So I guess what my point there, to follow up on Milt's point, is if that's able to use for that, and we start talking about things like moving us out of that building into a space, that money could be used to make maybe a space like this linked up for streaming, for meetings and stuff like that.
Oh, it's,
I'm just asking, I'm not saying, I'm suggesting that we do that, I'm just asking, are those things that money can be used for? Because what I'm getting at, trying to get at Heather, is that if we already have the money there and available, and we have the opportunity to fund important repairs and improvements to a facility out of a fund balance, I'd rather just take it out of the fund balance and keep that money there for something else, especially because we are probably can find ways to improve the ways we communicate, just my thought.
it's really just revenue, it's
Right.
franchise fees revenue. So you just list it with all your other revenues, then you have your appropriations, and it's just an easier way to do your budget rather than, because if you don't have all of it to fund, then you gotta go find another source, and your article gets very confusing, so
So
you
it's-
just.
So I think what we need to decide is if we want to do what Josh is suggesting and then determine how the funding gets there, where the funding comes from in order to fund that line. Because what we're having a conversation about right now is, like, this money exists and the general fund money already exists, and whether or not the fund balance already exists and how we're gonna fund the line. I think we need to figure out if we wanna fund the line, and if we do, then isn't that what Jerry decides where it comes from? Like, you tell us where we should have it come from,
What's that? I'm
if we
sorry,
wanna fund that line?
No.
You need to make a recommendation to the budget committee.
What do you wanna
Okay.
raise it or take it out of?
So let's figure out first if we wanna do it, and then we can figure out where
So,
it's coming from.
yeah, I think it's important to do the repairs to the Eureka Center for the same reasons that Josh brought up. It's used frequently, it's available to the public, we want it to be easily accessible. And when we're talking about spending town money, I think that this is an investment into something that has a return for the community, so that's why I think it's the important thing to fund.
I agree.
So we're adding this to the capital budget.
That's Josh's motion. It's based off of Calvin's input and Jerry's input, so.
Now, number was exactly
So-
$50,000.
$50,000.
Is it 50,000 minus the 9, or is it 50,000 including the 9?
Oh, it would not include the 9, because the 9 comes from the
ARPA.
ARPA.
So 50 in addition to the 9?
In addition, yeah.
Okay. And that,
So just, I just wanna get to a total here, cause it's
Right.
really the total we have to get to. So $60,000, so we have a motion on the table to,
well, wait a second, hold on though, cause this lives on this line, so we would be voting on the 9 here, so it's 50,000, because the 9 already lives in this line.
but we're putting, a budget together for $60,000, where the money comes from.
Well, ARPA's a little bit different though, cause we're saying we're gonna add the,
Yeah, these are two separate votes. It's, and Josh was doing the math, so it's like, the one vote is to yes, we can use the ARPA funds the way as designated in this supplement. And then the separate vote was to fund necessary repairs at Eureka. They're both going to Eureka, but they are distinct, so it's a different vote. And the reason Josh was asking about all the expenses was just to get a total, and then say, well, we know of that total, 9,000 of that is the heat, which is funded elsewhere, so that's where we came up with that 50 number, so they are separate votes.
I was just curious as to why you just, if you just need to add $60,000 to the Eureka fund, of which 9,000 X would come from ARPA funds, 25,000 would be raised and 25,000 would be.
Didn't we say
if you wanted to
Eureka
go
had
that
to
way.
be, didn't we say that ARPA has to be earmarked for a specific,
Yeah, you can't
Tax.
put it in a reserve account.
right, it has to be earmarked to pay for this
Right.
heating.
And it does have to be two questions.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think when we go to the warrant, we have to
So it's just
be
50
asking to
59.
spend the ARPA.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's fine, it's just, it's two questions, not one.
50 and 9,
Okay, so
or 51 and 9.
50 gets added to the 466.83, right? And then this
466.
stays the same, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
When
Everybody
you
on the
add a
same
line
page?
that says 50, Eureka,
I'm on the same page, other than, I don't remember on Josh, were you raising that? Were you just taking it out of, the whole 50 out
I
of?
was taking it out of,
the fund balance.
so it's not, it would not be a raise, it would be to transfer.
Transfer, right.
What would that be? Balance, is that allocated here somewhere?
Fund balance.
That would bring the fund balance back up to $500,000.
Right, and it would bring your other use of finances up to 516,836.
You're saying
What's
what's left?
subtracting though?
Yeah, what's?
No,
what's-
Something's gotta come down if we're
Hey,
moving something, if we're not raising it.
What,
The fund balance
is $3.7 million?
is 3.7, and we're taking, going back to the original 500,000 out.
So leave 3.2.
But you have to put it somewhere though.
It would go into the capital reserve account.
3.2 minus
3.7 is the total fund balance, and we're saying take 500 out, transfer 500 out to pay for all of this stuff.
I got
And
that,
that leaves a 3.2.
right.
So the minus is in the fund balance.
It's going to the transfers out.
Minus is in 14.
Yeah, we're
Right.
saying we need 50 grand more, we're gonna take it from the
50,000.
fund balance.
And then we're gonna put 50,000 out of
Yes.
fund balance, okay, that's it.
Well, that's what I suggested,
Right,
and to talk, I think your idea is a good one if we could do it, but I also think it's something that we could wait and discuss, because.
I'm totally fine with
because
that,
that's-
I feel like if it's there to use, we should talk about how we're gonna use it instead of just having, unless we're gonna invest it and then make some money on it, I'm
Well,
fine
my-
with that too.
You know, my thought is future planning is, that could help with the town office a little bit more,
That's where I was going with my,
if that's in need of stuff, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I guess I got lost
just-
there. Are we talking Eureka or are we talking
No,
town
that's
office? Okay, thank
I
you.
was just explaining why I wasn't.
Okay, so, back, now
Back
can
to
we
the
go to
question.
capital reserve and talk about,
Hang on.
like, each of the thingies?
we have a motion.
Yeah, you have a
Oh, sorry,
motion.
I thought we
Hold it.
were all
Hold it.
agreed.
The motion is for $50,000 to be transferred. From the fund balance of $3.7 million to fund the Eureka Center
Capital reserve.
and a capital reserve.
Just one, does the Eureka Center have a capital reserve account?
Yes.
well, it's got this, well, you
Yes,
see it,
yes, it does.
it's got this Eureka
Fund number
capital reserve.
75.
Yeah, it's got its
It's
own.
got three, 3,000.
Yeah, right here,
Yeah.
look.
People make
37.19.
donations to it.
Eureka Capital Reserve, $3,700.
$3,700.
Yep.
For some reason, I
wanna
thought those all got
adjust your-
swept to like a town. couple
Josh,
years back.
seeing that there's 37, did you wanna adjust your motion to
No.
46,000?
So we have a couple things in there.
Yeah.
So for clarity, for people that are figuring out where we're adding and putting things, if you go back to page 1, almost at the bottom of the page, where it reads 445,000, originally, we changed that to 450, and now, if we're doing what Josh is suggesting, that number changes to 500,000.
All right, so I got a motion on the table to transfer $50,000 from the general fund, $3.7 million, to fund the Eureka Capital Reserve. I have a second by Joe. Okay, any further discussion on that? All in favor? Okay. All opposed? Okay. 4 in favor, Rich opposes. Motion carries. And a motion for the second question.
Yeah, I move to approve the capital reserve account request, total of 466,836. Well, and to reflect the $50,000.
Well, I think they're separate questions,
Oh.
because one is being transferred, whether
One's
they're
from
being.
ARPA, right? We were talking
Are we
about-
voting on the capital reserves, or are we voting on the ARPA?
I think so, if I were doing it, it would be, the capital reserve would be what's listed, the 466,836, because that's being raised.
50,000.
No, but what is listed, the 466,836 is being raised, so that's one question. $50,000 is being transferred,
I mean, so, sorry, so we
so
hadn't
they're
even.
coming from different funding
Yeah.
sources.
Hold on,
Hang on a second.
you lost me there.
I thought we were talking about all the capital projects.
I think that he was just making a
And-
motion for discussion.
Hang on a second. So first of all, is everybody happy with the capital projects that were presented by the CIP committee? We didn't
So, yeah,
necessarily
just,
talk about it.
that's why I made the motion, because with Robert's rules, you make the motion, they get second, and then you go into discussion, you don't discuss before the motion, so that's why I
We
made.
can do that. It just-
That's
we
how-
jumped in we jumped in the Eureka and we talked that all the way down to the bottom of the foundation and back again. And we didn't talk about any of the other things that were presented.
Yeah, you're making
But we
a
had a
motion for
motion at
discussion.
the time,
Yeah.
so that's why we're having a discussion. So I was making the motion to approve the capital reserve account request. If there's a
That's
second,
fine.
then we go into that
Then we can go a second. Do
conversation.
we have a second? I had a second. Any discussion on the capital reserve account request in front of us?
Yes, I love a discussion.
Now, the Eureka Center is not part of this conversation, understand, because you didn't put it in this list. So you understand that, I just wanna make sure everybody's on the same page. We do not, the Eureka Center is a whole different part of it.
Right, we just voted to put $50,000 in the Eureka Center Reserve account.
And I don't
And
think-
now we're talking
okay.
about capital reserve.
And I don't think that we talked about the other $9,000 that we're talking about coming out of ARPA for the Eureka Center before we got here. So that's also outstanding as far as I'm concerned on the Eureka Center project. that
Right.
We've now.
But we had to peel that out because of ARPA, so.
I
has
get
to
it,
be
I just want to
separate.
finish one point of business at a time, and we just jumped to another one, so. Let's finish the capital reserve request discussion. Questions on capital reserve request?
What page is that on?
We didn't add the.
Separate handout,
14.
page
The
14
capital
as
reserve is
well.
14, line 998500. The 466,8. It's broken down into different.
Do we have extra copies of the supplement?
Yeah, I think so.
You can,
I think I have an electronic one, so I can move it over there too.
So we were presented, when Mark was here, a discussion about, changing the way that we fund our capital reserve accounts to go to level funding, a
That's
level
correct.
funding type scenario, and we didn't as a board talk about that. We changed it to tonight, and so, I think it's important to establish if the board wants to move in that direction, because it's different, it's very different than the way that we've done it before. Personally, I am in favor of this, because I think the more that we can, keep people's taxes from extreme fluctuations based on what we have to buy or improvements that we have to make, I think this accomplishes that, and so that's one of the reasons why I would be in favor for it, but I'm definitely interested to hear what other people have to say about it.
John?
I think it's important because it's planning, and I will say again that, you know, having the money in these capital reserve accounts and being taxed on it on a yearly basis to get to those purchases is a lot more cost effective for our individual taxpayers' money than borrowing the money and paying the high interest rates on it. So I agree that this is the better way to do it. I think it's, and the way it's, you know, I would support it.
Joe?
I think it also allows greater flexibility to capture different opportunities, you know, if things are set aside and the money's there, and there's a schedule to replace a piece of equipment next year, and it's in fine working order, you don't need to expend it. If you have to replace it next year, and all of a sudden there's a great opportunity because a local town's getting rid of a piece of equipment, and you can get it at a really good price, it allows that flexibility to maybe do that a year earlier to save money in the long run, whereas now there's times where you can't really do those sorts of things. So I just think it creates more opportunity to be more responsible in terms of like what Josh is saying for borrowing, but also pursue opportunities at the right time and, you know, capture savings there potentially.
I think that there's two things about this that are important. Rich brought up a concern at the last meeting, you know, about the select board, when the time comes up, you know, spending this money versus going to town meeting and asking every year or whenever it comes up that to spend the money. And so personally, I think it's really important that if we are gonna move to this system, like it would, my vote would almost be contingent on it, actually. That this is readily available information on our website where people can see exactly what's happening in a very transparent way. Because I do think other people will share that concern as well.
I agree with it. I think there's a lot of layers when you get into this, and the first layer of the onion per se is the actual plan and moving forward with what the town foresees buying in the future for whatever capital expenditures it may or may not have, a wish list or however you wanna do it. But what's the threshold and what's the number of the coffers that you're trying to build to? So are you just building like we have been over the years, vaguely, and have money that we're not even utilizing, that are sitting in the coffers? This is the first year, and well, since I've been sitting on this board, that I've seen so much money being depleted out of that. But in the same token, we're asking for that to go right back in, so you just have, it's kind of, it's like having a nest egg, but as soon as you spend your nest egg, you want it 100% replenished immediately. And I think you just have to have foresight of what is gonna transpire over the years. For example, I'm in favor of obviously saving money. To what point though? And it also depends on what economic conditions we are in. Right now, we are in an inflationary period, we're in higher interest rates, etc. 3 years ago, this town, or 4 years ago, this town was borrowing money at 2%, where we were getting 0.01% in the bank, and it was just sitting in the coffers rather than utilizing it. So I think there's a much broader approach that needs to be added here, another layer, before we can just make that determination. I do think you need to add money to capital reserves, but to go to just quote unquote, we're gonna flat fund everything out from here on there, I think the CIP committee needs to be involved with that, I think the select board committee needs to be involved with that, and it takes more resources than just, quite frankly, a conversation over a cup of coffee.
I think there's a bit of a mischaracterization of what happened. We were presented that last week last meeting, they showed us an outline of exactly what they expected for capital expenditures over the next decade and a half. So this isn't just a throw $200,000 a year at it and let the select board decide what they wanna do. We were already given all that information that included the CIP's review, so there's a process there, so it's not really a fair characterization to suggest that that's not happening.
But by that rationale, you can't say it's a fair characterization that the town is stagnant, that the town doesn't change and have other needs as the town
What's that have to
progresses.
do with this
Because
conversation?
you don't know what the town is gonna need in 10 years from now.
Well, we can take a look at depreciation of equipment and have an understanding of a schedule that we know that this piece of equipment will become 40 years old and that it's, should be replaced at year 30. This isn't, we're not creating this as a novel concept. This is not the first municipality who's come up with this idea. This is a pretty steady framework that Cherry was
I don't
really
think this is
directed
novel.
to from the start to come up with a way to do this. And this is just saying, if you know that your car is 10 years old and that you generally get 15 years out of a car, don't wait until you're 15 to try to come up with all that money to buy your car. Start saving over the next 5 years.
That's exactly why the CIP committee was invented 3-4 years ago.
And they presented us with all of this information last meeting. So we have that schedule of what the goal would be over the next 10 years. So I think that to say that we can't just have a cup of coffee conversation isn't really what happened.
I just, well, we are, I mean, we've had 2 meetings on it, really. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of discussion.
Well, and the CIP
From a-
presented.
There hasn't been a lot of
Yeah.
discussion on it unless I missed a meeting on this particular subject with the board.
Last meeting was that.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We have not had, you're agreeing with what I'm saying. We have not had a discussion on this as a board in its entirety of how you wanted to proceed going forward.
But that's what we're doing.
Well, like I said, I think that's a little bit, that's a pretty detailed conversation that we need to have.
Which we're doing.
I think that when the CIP, if I remember correctly, and obviously Joe, you can speak to that, when they were doing their rankings, there was a very full circle conversation that took place about whether or not funding should be attached to projects, and their importance. And why don't you speak to what the outcome of that was, because I wasn't there firsthand, I just watched.
Yeah, we did discuss the projects. We did have quite a discussion on, you know, quite frankly, whether the town was ready for a level funded budget. The schedules have been, that have been put together have morphed over the years. We've been doing CIP for 5 years. You know, they've become really good. The schedules have looked out over the course of 10 and 20 years of what we'll need for equipment. You know, I think we were mixed on whether level funding would, that the town would accept that. We felt that, you know, it is a thing we should look at for the future, but it wasn't, I don't think we came up with, you know, the actual recommendation to go that way. It was gonna be up to the select board to actually make that decision, so here we are, talking about that same subject, so.
I think one of the, I've been, you know, while I've only sat on this board, you know, not even at a year yet, and on the budget committee for a few years, I've been paying attention for a number of years. And one of the things that residually comes up is that we are constantly reacting to things that are happening versus being proactive about things that are happening. And that was part of why we moved to a town manager form of government, so that we could be more proactive, and plan, and not always have to be reacting to things. And I think that moving to this, puts us in a situation where we're planning instead of always being reactionary. And I think as our town grows, that has to be part of it. I mean, it just does. It's like, even like as a homeowner, even as a business owner, you can't just shoot from the hip. Like in order to be successful, there has to be planning involved. And to me, that's what this represents.
Yeah.
Sorry, go
I
ahead.
know, and I was just gonna say, so, and I get what Rich is saying, we do have a lot of money in the bank, I mean, we have saved quite a bit of money, which then, you know, you say, well, don't wanna just tax people just for the sake of taxing them. I also had some personal experience with, recently, putting my retirement together, so I'm now looking at fixed income myself, and I like the idea of having the level loaded taxes. It makes it easier for me to plan when I'm going through, you know, and thinking about retirement, and, I could, you know, again, it's a, you know, the calculation for somebody who is on a fixed income, it becomes a easier number to look at every year. But it is still a large sum of money that we're asking the people to go away, when we also have money in the bank. We do have some projects in. We have some projects that that we have to think about coming up that, would be in the future, which, you know, we talked about it, briefly about town hall. Increasing the size of the town hall somewhere, increasing our town footprint, I'll call it, rather than placing it just on the town hall. You know, that'll come with a cost later on. Whether money's cheap or not at that point, we don't really know. We don't have that crystal ball. Right now, money's not cheap. And so having that extra money in the bank, and keeping it there, and then raising this, you know, level funding the two departments, you know, maybe in the long run, a better way to go, to keep everything level now, and then look at some of the long-term expenditures coming up that we haven't seen yet, and then looking at it in another year or two, and see if level funding actually was, you know, the right way to go, or do we stop that exercise?
So are you suggesting level fund for a couple of years and then reevaluate?
And then reevaluate, and then, you know, right now, it looks very promising, you know, money is expensive tomorrow. Again, I think we're gonna have a couple expenditures come up that they utilize, that we could make some decisions, utilize the pool of money we've already captured. I mean, it is people's money we're holding, and, you know, everybody's money that we're holding, and so, but you could offset more as well, and not raise as much.
So my question is this budget that's presented here, maybe without the little bit of additions that we've done tonight, this represents a zero tax increase, correct?
Yep.
So
That is correct.
so raising this doesn't represent an increase unless it's whatever we maybe added.
That's,
This budget represents flat funding year one.
Right, okay, so just one other point, Josh, and then please go, is that we do have a $3.7 million fund balance, and whatever, I think we're at 500,000 to transfer out, leaves us at 3.2, and then if we do move to the thing where we have the fund balance that is represented by the 2 months of expenditures and whatnot, you know, that leaves us with an amount of money that we could then discuss about investing, where we would be able to be generating revenue, right, to be able to also help contribute to this in a situation where we're not raising the taxes with this budget.
well, here, let me just be, sorry, Josh, one more thing I will point out, that yes, say we do this, and we deplete it down to $3.2 million. Jerry will tell you that this is an estimate on this budget. Invariably, every year, this number will probably go up by $200,000 to $300,000. So you go from 3.2 back up to say 3.5 at the end of the year, because the budget is the budget. You've got a little bit extra in there. That goes back into that fund at the end of the year. You raise more taxes this year because you built more houses and you did other things, so you end up with almost, I'll say, a net gain, not quite. You don't end up with your 3.7 back, but you end up with
You end up like last year.
You end up with like last year.
Last year, you picked up a $10 million surplus in evaluation, and that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, so I can see, the point is, you know, do you know, not, you know, is level funding the right thing to do right now, knowing you're gonna have all that other revenue coming in?
Is that revenue known? It sounds like the answer is not. It's not known. It depends on how much is built, what the reevaluations look like. And I think what I'm getting at here is, a bird in the hand's better than two in the bush. Whether we start level funding now or not, doesn't change our needs to replace pieces of equipment for public works or for the fire department in the future. So we have to generate the money at some point, and so it's either evenly spread over a period of time, or trying to scramble when that comes down the line. And we can always play the game of like, well, what happens in the future? What if there's a new grant that says every town in the United States gets a free fire truck, and now we raised all this money for a fire truck? Like, we can always come up with scenarios like that, but I think it's more responsible to be spreading that raising out. And then if you're in the situation where you're now generating more revenue, the following year, you can make an adjustment for that. Say, well, we ended up with a surplus last year, so we don't need to we'll take that surplus we got from last year, put that into the level fund, and then reduce the amount that we're pulling out of the budget. So I think you can make that correction year to year.
I think if you make,
John.
sorry, John, I think that's fine to make that correction, but again, if you're pulling that much money out of the coffers this year, it almost looks like, but you're not raising any taxes. I mean,
Well,
think
that's
about
because
that.
that's frankly, it's
But think
because the
about it.
board has overtaxed
Right,
for
that's what I'm
so
saying.
many years.
That's what I don't want to happen again.
Right,
is what
which
I'm
is,
getting at.
which is, I mean, and
Which
thank
the reason we're
goodness-
not overtaxing is because we're spending the money from the previous board overtaxing.
Previous board hasn't really raised the taxes much over the years.
Right, but without
It
raising
just,
the
there was a
taxes,
concern about dipping
we've
into the coffers by the
accumulated $3
public.
point whatever million, and so now we're saying, let's start investing in our future and paying our bills without increasing taxes by spending down the money we've already collected from people. So saying, hey, we're not gonna make you pay more taxes this year because we already have it from you from the previous years. We're just spending it, we're spending that down. That just makes sense to me. So I don't even understand how this is this much of a detailed conversation. It just seems like a pretty foolproof approach to handling these things in the future and paying our bills now.
I'd like to hear what Josh has to say.
So, one of the concerns I raised to Jerry was similar to what the discussion we're having, and that is, you know, if we keep putting $500 from that account into the budget so that we don't raise taxes, eventually it's gonna run out. It could be, you know, we're at about 2 million, so it could be 4 years from now. Presumably, the way things go, is we're gonna recoup some of that at the end, but there's an end. And so, the reason that I don't want to use that money to pay off, essentially say, okay, this year we're gonna use this $2 million to lower our taxes, is next year it's gonna be that big chunk, right?
Right.
Where the taxes are gonna go back up. So, I think using a small portion of it, I think next year, that $700,000 or so comes off the books. And I think at that point, we have a longer term discussion about these things. And then we decide, hey, you know what? We have this money, we're pretty steady with our taxes, with our expenses, we're putting this money aside. Then we can use that $2 million on renovating the town office, which needs it, because the comment Jerry made to me during one of our recent discussions was, even if the town approved us hiring somebody, we have no place to put them. So, you know, we're running out of that space. You know, I will be one to say that I don't like that the town office is closed on Fridays. I think the town should be open, you know, all 5 days, because there are some people, you know, who can't get out Thursday nights. You know, this time of year, it took me 2 weeks to come over and get new trash tags, because, I was late leaving the office one day and on a Thursday, and had to go to, Thursday night basketball. So I didn't get a chance to come back over. You know, if you could hire somebody to stay over Friday and late another night, I would love it. I think that's a better use of the money, than, you know, than saying, okay, we're gonna lower your taxes this year, but it's only gonna last a year. And so, I agree that there needs to be more discussion. My concern is that the way our system is set up is we have 2 meetings to discuss it, and then we have to make a proposal to give to the budget committee, and then we have the discussion. And My personal feeling is, that we should set this money aside, flat fund it, and then we can continue this discussion after. And that might be a more appropriate time to decide. And maybe my opinion will be changed, I don't know. But I think putting that money aside for those expenses is important.
My question is really quick. When we fund reserve accounts, can we put it in a situation where it makes interest?
Well, it just goes, it's really in one big sweep account.
Yeah.
It's just in an account on paper.
So what I would like to just see is, well, maybe we could not tonight, to Josh's point, have a conversation about how money that we're building can work for us interest-wise in a way that makes us more money rather than just, I would love to have that conversation at some point.
We did it a few years back.
And that's like that 2 million or 1.5 if this all goes through, putting that aside
Yeah,
somewhere. So you have your 1.7 that we're supposed to have in the account, and then you have this money.
I just think if that was
So using
also
that-
part of what we could
and then-
say to the town,
And then the interest from that money, you put it in that account, and then uses.
Yeah, I mean, banks are paying right now, let's say we have over $500,000 in the bank, even from a business loan, from a business account, on a savings business account, you can get anywhere between 4.25 to 4.75.
so if I was
If you get $3
not
million,
in this
that's a lot of
seat,
cash.
if I was not in this seat, and one of the things that I was able to be educated about and understand is that if we're level funding these accounts, and that in turn is also making, revenue, interest, right? That, to me, would be a reason to want to do this. I'm done.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, to Josh's point about using the reserve or the fund balance to pay down taxes, or to reduce taxes. I think there is a bit of a distinction where it's not just like, oh, we're just paying down this bill, it's an investment into the town's future needs, and that's where I think that there's the strength, another strength there, is that you're saying, we're taking this money out of that, but we're not just saying, we're gonna use it for whatever, we're saying we're dedicating it to those improvements that the CIP has already approved, that we've laid out over the next 10 years, and I think that that's another strength to it. And then to tie into what Heather said, if you have the opportunity to put that in an investment, it's like any other person putting money into their savings account to save for a big purchase in a few years, it can earn a little bit of money for you. So I just think that it's steady, it's more predictable, and it's a better way to allocate those funds than letting them sit in a fund balance without any sort of plan for them. So that's why I'm a fan of it.
Can I ask a question? About, so if let's say we do this the way that it's outlined, right, and we're doing $205,000 into public works, and then when I go to the schedule, and so if we vote to do that, does that then in turn also mean, are they two separate things, that we're voting to, I don't know what the word is that I wanna use, for the projects that are listed for 2024?
No, it doesn't tie you to that. But this is saying, what this is saying to everyone is that we're asking you to level fund our,
10 years down the
reserve
road.
accounts, and here are the things that we see as being things that we need for 10 years, and if we fund it at this rate for 10 years, we will cover all these items.
Okay. So
That
if
doesn't
we-
mean that we're saying that money can only be used on a riding mower in 2024.
Right, no, I
That money can
understand that.
only be used on an excavator in 2031.
No, I understand
If
that.
other things arose, kinda like what Mark was saying, other things arose that fell into an immediate need, you could address that. But like anything, this is just what we're saying, this is the plan.
So, in terms of the board, right? There'll be another conversation, if let's say we level fund it, and we go to town meeting, and the town level funds it. Then there's another conversation and vote about the board spending this money on these things. Am I understanding that correctly?
Right, we would,
The town,
No,
you're
it
gonna
wouldn't
ask
go.
to buy in the future,
That's what I'm
yes, you're
asking.
still gonna ask the town to buy those things.
I don't think we are.
No,
Well, good luck.
no, that's the point about the level funding for that, is that you're saying that this is what we expect to have for things, and then it gives the authority, like Mark was saying, to the select board to make the purchases as they deem fit.
As the schedule dictates.
No, it doesn't, the schedule does not dictate what you
Well-
spend, that's what you're vocalizing, that this is our plan, but if this is voted for, the schedule doesn't dictate. The select board has to buy the riding lawnmower next year. If we get to next year and decide that the riding lawnmower is still functioning fine, we don't have to buy it. If we decide we want 2 push lawnmowers instead of a riding lawnmower, I'm not saying Calvin wants
So
that,
we
we can do that.
if as a board, we decide to do the 205 for public works, I'm just using the numbers that are here, right? We're not putting on the warrant this year,
We're gonna buy a plow. truck.
riding mower, equipment trailer.
You wouldn't put that on the warrant.
This is
That's my point.
justification for saying the reason we
But
wanna
that's-
raise X amount over
That's my
these
point.
years is
Yeah.
that it would set us up
That-
to follow a purchasing
Right.
schedule like this.
Okay,
Right.
so
But
it's
there
2
is
separate
flexibility.
conversations.
But that's really the problem.
That's what the problem is. We've been a specific government over a few hundred years, and the towns, we've been very transparent for saying what we're buying and giving the town a lot of input of what we do going forward. You're almost,
Well, you had to before.
but that's what I'm saying, you're almost, by doing something like this, and I get it, it's not intentional, but you're almost going to a different form of government.
Well, we did go to a different form of government. We got
You
a
did,
town
but you're
manager
not,
form
we're
of
not a
government.
town council is what I'm getting at.
But the difference is with this is like Mark pointed out at the last meeting, at the town meeting, there is then the town votes, do you give the select board the authority to expend funds out of these accounts should they deem necessary? So it's just giving the select board the authority each year to say, you don't have to wait until next year if something breaks in, this truck needs replacing, you don't have to wait until April 1st of next year or have a special town meeting to try to get that truck that's sitting on the dealership and just hope that no one else buys it before April 1st.
I think one of the things that you suggested the last time that I think is a good idea is that if the Warren article reads something similar to that, is that we could attach a percentage to it, or we could attach a up to dollar amount to it, if people are uncomfortable with just the wide open whatever, you know, I would be inclined to hear that type of conversation also. But I do, and I understand what you're saying, I completely understand what you're saying. I also feel like this is part of what Jerry was tasked with, this is part of what our comp plan says, this is part of planning to not have to just be reactionary. And again, I really want this to be very transparent on the website so people can see exactly what this is about. And in 2 years from now, be able to go in and look and be like, oh, that was what their plan was, that was what they did, this is what's coming next. I think that that's really important, but
I think the town has shown over the years that they like to have, for lack of better words, control over the purchases.
I think 200 people that show up at town meeting like to have control over the
Correct.
purchases. 200 people.
I've seen quite a few people in this room that are not,
No, you
they
can call
wouldn't
me
even,
out,
not necessarily even you,
it was me,
Heather.
out there,
But-
I said a lot.
Yeah, but not even from that standpoint. They don't even wanna give a select board a $10,000 discretionary fund. But now we're gonna say, hey, we're gonna give you a $300,000 discretionary fund to go out and buy whatever you deem necessary for the town. I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, I'm
Right.
not saying it can't be done, I just think it warrants a bigger conversation,
Right.
not necessarily just with this board and the CIP committee, but with the people of the town. moving
So
That's
I
town
think that
meeting.
people of the
That's where-
town.
This is where this will happen, is we
Right,
have
and
to
I,
bring it
but
to
I
town
also
meeting to
think
have the
the
conversation
town
at
spoke
town
when we
meeting.
went to a town manager form of government. It wasn't 200 people, that was a ballot vote, that was right? And
So it's
we went to a
400
town
people.
manager form of government, which includes this kind of governance.
If you weren't on this board, did you approve that last year?
With a town manager? Yes,
Well, we had a town manager last year.
yes, I would approve it last year with a town
You
manager.
didn't give them.
When it was a board that there wasn't a town manager, no, because all of us, we don't live this, we don't know this.
I agree with you 1,000% on that. We've
Right?
been
But now-
advocates for that for years.
Exactly,
We just have
and-
never been able to get that conveyed across the floor that giving,
I mean,
taking the people the
In my
power out of
opinion,
their
and I
hands.
think, I really hope that we present this well at town meeting, Jerry has found a $3.7 million general fund balance that we didn't know we have. I think the guy knows what he's doing.
Well,
And so I am
Well,
in
not
support
take
of
away
this.
from Jerry, but he found $2 million.
We throw in
I
Jerry.
knew about the 1.7.
You only have.
Right.
Okay, what do we need, what do
Let me just
Yeah.
add, you've been doing it a certain way for many years, right? You get that. But you are the trustees of the account. The law spells it right out that you have that authority, and whether you use it or not is really up to you. But it's set up and designed that way for a reason, and it just allows more flexibility when you need to make those purchases rather than asking one time a year. That's why it was set up that way. Using it that, you wanna continue that way, that's up to you.
I don't know, to me, I think it should be up to the town.
Right.
That's my
It's
only
going-
argument. I don't think it should be.
it's
up to
going
us.
to
It's
be.
up to them, but it's say, vote you out, or next year, we're not gonna approve it, right? I mean, they have two
I
opportunities
mean,
every year.
but this isn't like, this isn't gonna be up to the town, it's going to town meeting with this. They have to vote on both the budget and then they have to vote on both that authority. So it's not like we're forcing this on the town, but you can't make, like you pointed out, the town has the control to make these changes. So you can't make the change without going to the town meeting. We can't have a kumbaya session at the Eureka Center and then say, oh, the 27 people who showed up decided we're moving to this
Yeah.
this
So,
methodology.
Joe, I hear you saying, and I totally agree with you. I think what the point I'm trying to say is, just like when we went to a town manager, we put it on the town's radar ahead of time. We don't put it on there, we're not there to close them the day of the town meeting. We're facilitating it so that in the future, we are looking to do this. And we get the towns, because if you're trying to close them the day of on this, I think it's gonna be a trouble, where if you just present it in the course of the nature of time over the next year or two, have a meeting or two on it, et cetera, specifically to that it's gonna change drastically how we've been doing business for the last 200-300 years, I think it will go over much easier with the town. That's all I'm saying. I'm totally in favor of it. It's just, the presentation needs to be dead on, and I don't think it should be a Saturday close in a 2-hour meeting or 4-hour. It's a pretty big discussion.
Isn't all of our budget a Saturday close, besides the 2 meetings we have right now?
You're talking about giving carte blanche authority to something that the town has never done.
I actually suggested last year, and I would still love to see it happen this year, there is no point where the public gets to make public comment on the budget ahead of town meeting. And
Yes,
there's
it-
been a lot, no,
We've had 2 meetings,
Yeah.
and we're gonna have a third.
Right.
They have three opportunities,
Maybe even a fourth.
right?
Yeah,
you mean in our
someone-
public comment session?
Someone
Yeah.
could have stepped
Yeah.
up
That's what-
this
That's true.
morning, today, and said, these are the
That's true.
7 issues I have.
Well,
with
I
the
will say
budget."
that's different than what we've done in the past, because in the past, that hasn't been the case, when we've had our budget meeting, when we do it together, right? So,
Yep.
you're right, thank you for pointing that out.
We will have that.
But I am in favor of the way that we do for the land use ordinance, and people can come and ask questions and get those things answered before we go to public meeting. I'm in favor of that for the budget as well, which would speak to Rich's point of
But
being able to
that's,
get
the
information
challenge
out
there is that, again, like Jerry says, like, the select board is elected to be the trustees of this, and there's, the fiduciary responsibility we have to the town. And so, while I'm 100% open for, clear and concise communication and transparency, it's now, it is a lot of work, like what John and the conservation the planning board chair and the conservation commission have had to do for those land use ordinance issues. It is a lot of work to do the budget. If you're now adding in 2 public meetings and a public hearing, that is just taxing the resources that we have even more and more. And at some point, there has to be a discussion of the election is to elect somebody that I believe can make certain decisions, and so that's the balance there too.
Yeah, I
It's
just
a-
would like for
it's a
people that
challenge.
have questions to have the opportunity to ask them
Yeah,
and get them answered.
And I think that there is that opportunity through submitting questions to Jerry that he could potentially bring up in the manager's report and say, this is a question that came across with my budget, about the budget last time. I mean, someone forwarded a question, I think, about the budget after our last meeting, and then there is the opportunity in the public comment section, and maybe the public comment section during budget meetings needs to be expanded more than 3 minutes, so that could be a happy medium there, but I just think that there, at some point, the wheels need to turn, and the select board has to be there to help that happen, and have the authority to help that happen.
Sure.
Sure, I think there was a motion and a second.
To approve the capital account request, yes.
Are we all good with 60 grand for assessing? That one's not a level fund. Everybody?
I'm fine with that.
Grants, that was to bring the grant line, up to an even number.
Yep.
The Union Church,
That was to bring the Union Church line back up to 31.
$31,000.
and that was where that
Yeah,
was where
but
that
that's a little
conversation.
bit of, I think,
Right,
that
okay, so,
conversation's a little
okay.
horse before the cart.
So right now, we wanna
Cart
keep
before the
this here because this is where this is, and then after we have the conversation about the Union Church, if we need to readjust that recommendation where that number lives, we
Yeah,
could.
no, I think this number should live there until the town actually votes and say, we'll give the building to so-and-so. So I think we have to have that number in there irregardless,
Okay,
if that makes sense.
yep, I'm fine,
Because the town can say, no, keep the building.
okay. So do we wanna have our recommendation be,
I have no further discussion.
We got a motion on the table to approve the capital reserve account request for $466,836.
Jerry's gonna,
No, because you're adding 50,000.
Oh, sorry, we're
So-
gonna add the 50.
Right, so
Sorry,
it's
new number.
actually 516,836.
516,836, that adds the $50,000
Yes.
for the Eureka Center, I'm sorry. I had a motion by
me.
Joe, second by Heather. Any
Hold on
further
one-
discussion?
hold on one quick second, hold on one quick second. And maybe it doesn't matter. Wait, give me 1 second. Where is it? No, right here, okay, okay. We put 50 on page 1. We put the 445 back up to 500,000. But now you're saying we're gonna add it on page 14 to
What we're saying,
466.
we're adding it to this balance, but it's going to come out of reserve.
Come on.
So that number if this number increases to 500,000, somewhere else in here, the number 50,000 has to be added.
So adding
And that will be
this,
added to capital reserve.
so adding this here, do you see what I'm trying to say with you right now?
I understand what you're trying to say, and I think
it
it's
works.
working.
Okay, okay,
Okay,
thanks,
further
It's
discussion?
good to double check.
good, yes.
Okay. So we got a motion on the table for $516,836, to approve the capital reserve account request as stated here, which includes $50,000 for the Eureka Center. All in favor? All opposed? No opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
And we already talked about the next part, right?
Yeah, we already did.
Yeah, we already did that.
Can I just throw something up there to you, just as far as those donations go? You had, like, the recreation reserve account, and I'm not really sure what that's for. So you could, I mean, why not fund the snowmobile and the baseball with that money rather than raising it again? You've already raised it. So, just throwing that out there to you.
So to transfer money over.
You know, you've already raised the money, so why raise another 2,500 or another 1,100, for that, for the snowmobile and the baseball? I mean, that's really recreational activities, so. that's up to you, but I just throw
So you're
that.
saying transfer the $23,742 recreation reserve over to
No, what
No,
I'm
he's saying
saying,
transfer 5,000 out of the recreation reserve,
just, not the whole balance over, but just.
it's the
or,
2,500
I'm
and
sorry,
the 1,100.
3,600, 3,600.
So the article essentially would be to move out of the, what's it called? The
Reserve.
fund,
Recreation.
5,000 of it, and then the remaining 11, we're gonna, whether it's raised or moved from whatever, another source of capital.
Yep.
Is that what you're proposing to do?
The recreational stuff, I'm not really, you have,
You have 16,000, you're suggesting that we utilize the money that's in the recreational account, which was approximately 5,000, correct? 5,000, 6,000?
23,000.
23,000, use 5,000 of it to fund approximately
Those
5,000.
30
so
items,
it's gonna-
Use 5,000 or 3,600?
3,600.
yeah, 3,600 out of the recreational account, that way you're not raising that
3,600,
money.
2,500 and
But
1,100.
you'd still be raising the scholarship fund if that's what you want.
Yeah, so would that then decrease that 500,000 by $3,600?
Yeah.
Because we're just reallocating rather than raising?
Right, you wouldn't be raising the 2,500 and the 1,100.
Yep.
So, I just know that.
Or you could leave the 500 alone and just take it out of what you're raising, which is a negligible amount for people, but leave that 500,000 there. Say
I'd
that's
be more
your
inclined to
number.
leave it as is, and let it- because I got a feeling some of this is
Gonna change.
gonna change.
Well, we can talk about the funding source later. We don't have, right? We just have to approve the amounts right now. We can talk about where it's gonna come from later.
In
Yeah,
the
but this
past,
was,
we've
what
typically
Jerry's saying is
provided
we
that
would
for
change
budget.
the amount that we're approving, because if we transferred the
Well,
3,600 into addressing one of these concerns, then we don't need to raise that 3,600, so that's less that we have to use from that, so that would be voting on a different amount.
we wanna give the budget committee the information on where the money's coming from for each of the items as well.
Okay, I don't care.
So in that,
It's trivial stuff.
you're donating, you'd be raising 12,500 rather than the 16,000. And just pulling the money out of the reserves, you've already raised it.
Yeah, it
16,000,
does. I'm in budget,
I think, my opinion is
It's a-
that
it's a neg- I'm sorry.
if, I just think like the 500,000 is a easy number, right? And I do think that we have things that are coming up that we could, if we wanted to, pool some of those reserve accounts and use that money. I mean, I don't care, I like even numbers myself, so, you know, but,
There's what, 3,600 households in Durham, not even, so you're talking $1 or $2 this would save.
I
Which,
don't even think it would be that.
right,
Yeah, when,
so,
It would be, if it was $1 per household, it would be 20 cents per household. We got 0.20 already.
leave it,
I think just leave it, I think it's
Yeah,
just
leave
cleaner
it.
right now to leave it,
okay?
okay? Okay, ARPA?
Looks good to me.
So we have a proposal to use ARPA funds to fund the CAD dispatch, the land use codification, Eureka upgrades.
I move we approve as is for 44,630.
I have a motion to,
Second.
Rich seconds.
do
Discussion?
we need to present though to the town what the money's gonna be used for? I think the explanation from Eureka Center needs to be, this is what we're gonna get for that $9,000, right? Unless we can use it as a whole, like Jerry thought, but otherwise I think it needs. So, that's just something to think about.
Everything else is kind of,
Okay.
And I don't know if we wanna make a recommendation as a board, but just based on the fact that the heat cost and that being such an issue, I think we should recommend that go towards heat, but that's why we have people that
Wasn't that
manage
what
those
the
departments.
$9,000 is for?
9,000 is for.
Yeah,
Well,
it
that
has
was
to be,
one-
it has to be earmarked for
Yeah.
a project.
Oh, I didn't see an explanation of that, I guess.
Well, we had the discussion about the
Yeah, I didn't
mixing.
think that that was like a concrete thing, I thought that was just throwing numbers around.
No,
Okay,
okay.
okay.
So, all in favor to accept 44,630? All in favor?
Yes,
All opposed? Okay, no opposed, motion carries.
Did we just finish the first bullet of old business?
That was quick.
Do we need to vote to extend, because I know at one point.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? On the,
Wait,
do you
sorry,
plan,
I was,
Hang on, yeah, I was gonna ask that if we wanted to extend or did we want to go on to another evening?
the reason I brought it up is because Joe had mentioned capping meetings at 9, and so we wanna continue, I
The
think
board-
technically we have to
the board-
vote to extend.
I think there's a lot on this agenda that we haven't even gotten to yet, and it's 9 o'clock. I don't mind extending, but I would like to be able to release people that are here to speak to points that we might not get to tonight.
Okay. What's the option then? If we, even if we extend, we have a pretty large agenda here, what is the option then to, continue on with our meeting tomorrow night? Is everybody available?
I definitely can't tomorrow night, I could Thursday.
Really good dinner. One down on basketball.
We still have, we have Union Church.
I'm good till 9:30. I got some stuff, I don't mind going to,
I would-
want to get in the middle.
We have Union Church and we have the land use ordinance.
I move that we, move the Union Church article, or we table Union Church article and move into land use ordinance, and then truncate the meeting with a 9:30 end.
I don't know if we can get through that in half an hour. I think we can get through Union Church in half an hour, I don't know that we can get through land use. What I would need to know about land use is, are we at a dead stop for the date for things to be able to work? Or if we had to have you come on Thursday, if we met on Thursday, would that work? No.
The dead stop is, we have to have a public hearing between the, I think it's the 7th of March and the 29th of March. And so that's
Oh,
the planning board, so if you, I'm not telling you to do it, because I know everybody wants to get this over with, we have time, I guess is what I'm saying, so.
John was ahead of schedule.
I'm sorry that you've been here all night if we decide not to have you come talk tonight.
He has a life, so you need to apologize to him.
I'm apologizing to both of you, really, I feel badly.
There's no baseball games on tonight.
There's no baseball game.
I just don't think.
Did you have something else, John?
That was it. No, I was just gonna ask
Okay,
if-
all right, thank you, all right. So
I mean,
back to our discussion, what's our, we can go till 9:30, but, all right, we can discuss it at that point.
If we have time for the planning board to punt that to the next meeting, I think that's fine.
I won't be here, so that's fine with me.
I guess I've asked the planning board how long they can do it.
I think how long we need is the limiting.
Planning board, let's see what that, see what they say, just something we want.
I think,
I don't need long.
So, I mean, we could do a secondary meeting on the 7th of February as well. Rather than, the next meeting would be not the 7th, the 6th, I'm sorry.
February 7th is a Wednesday.
No, I'm sorry, right, I screwed up, I'm looking at the wrong day. The 6th is a Tuesday,
February 6th will work.
I can do that also.
that would be a Tuesday, and then we'd have our regular meeting the following, the 13th.
I think it's like Tuesday, what day?
The 6th of February?
That's
And then
fine.
we can still, let's talk to you in church.
Does that work for you, February 6th? Yes,
Okay.
is that,
Is that,
Jerry?
Oh,
Everybody?
the 6th of February, if we did a secondary meeting to talk the planning board recommendations.
We're all screwed
Yeah.
I can't right now commit to February 6th.
Okay.
I'm not saying I can't do it, but I'm also not saying I can't do it.
Thank you,
Is that
Calvin.
fair?
Thank you.
I know I understand.
It's just this time of year, it's just
No,
really tough.
it's crazy.
Do we wanna do Union Church tonight, or do we wanna get to the other points of business that we have to get through, and we're only gonna meet till 9:30?
I-
Do Union Church with planning board?
Alright, I'm gonna make a motion. I move that we table the planning board discussion, and we address the Union, we spent 30 minutes addressing the Union Church and then closing up the rest of the meeting.
I said 20 and then 10
Yeah,
minutes.
20 and then 10 minutes, yeah, let's just,
Cap it.
yeah,
Yeah, I accept
Let's
your
just-
friendly.
Okay,
okay.
Do we have a second?
second.
Second, all in favor? Yeah, sounds good, so we're moving,
I mean, I can run it down all night, I can be here till midnight.
I cannot,
Okay, Union Church.
No, I may be asleep, I got a big late tomorrow, so.
all right. Union Church. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, so on your supplemental form on the bottom of it, I just took a crack at like what maybe what the Union Church articles might look like. I have talked to the attorney, he's on notice that we're transferring this building and that sort of thing. But I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page as far as language that we're gonna use in this article, so I can have.
So, my point is, Rich's point here, you know, we're seeing if we wanna raise and appropriate $9,543 to the Union Church Restoration Fund, and then appropriate $31,000 from the Union Church Trust Restoration Fund to help fix the building repair. It sounds like what you're saying, it might be worth some wordsmithing to say, to raise and appropriate 9,433, or to raise and appropriate $31,000 to the donation fund
Yeah.
slated for the Union Church, because that might be an easier way to convey those funds if the legalese doesn't line up saying, well, this can't be, because I had the same concern as you after we thought about the meeting last time, that the intent is to use that building, we know that the intent is to use that building for a public space, but we also know that there's no second mode of egress, so how much can you actually use it? We also know that there's limited parking, so how much does that play into it? And I just wanna cover our buns when it comes to the legal side of things, and I think Rich brought up a really good point as to a way to do that. So I think that we wordsmith this just to say, into the,
My reason for coming up with that, because he was very specific, we all have to be in agreement. And I just thought that would be an easier way to pass, like I said, a straight face test with the public, because it's hard to make an argument that we're gonna donate funds to a building for public use when the building's not necessarily, it's not really in a condition for public use.
that was giving me a little bit of heartburn at the end of last meeting, because even though I know that that's what they want to use it for, I was like, 6 months ago, we were talking about how we won't let anyone in. So we are on record saying, you can't even go in there, but here's $31,000 for your public building, so that's kind of my hang up there.
I apologize, I'm sincerely apologizing, because I was looking for the wording that we used with the Methodist Church while you were talking. And I just wanna make sure, because we have the money that's already in the Union Church, you were saying we would ask the town to transfer the money out of that restoration account
Right?
To a the donation account.
to,
Transfer it out of that account to the general fund,
General
and in
fund.
return, we would make a donation via the charity
Right.
through the general fund
Okay.
versus trying to swap monies that was raised for public and giving it
got
to a
it, yes,
a
I just
private
wanted to make
entity.
sure that we were doing
We're
that
asking,
middle,
yeah, we're
the
asking,
middle step.
It's the
Yeah.
same.
we're asking for
Yeah.
$9,500, and then we're saying after you've given us that $9,500, we wanna transfer a total of $31,000 to the general fund for a donation to the Union Church Society or club or organization, I can't remember
I don't have a problem with that as long as there are contingencies, like, for example, for the transfer, I still think we need to say, use it for the public purpose, how we discussed, I think we discussed the museum and media
The
space or whatever.
contents with the other.
That's another issue, but I also think for the money, it should, you know, again, it's not I want it to go towards the repairs, cause that's the intent.
Right,
And I think that it needs to be worded in that manner, so that it says something along the lines of a donation, the $31,000 donation towards the stated repairs that have been provided by so-and-so. and so that the money can only be used for that.
The Historical Society, when they were here, said that they were fine bringing invoices to Jerry, to have Jerry cut the check. So even if we still are doing it in the form of a donation, they could bring in their receipts for the work that was done to show, right? If that feels like a little bit more of an insurance policy to the fact that the money is getting used for repairs.
I mean, I don't, the insinuation, I think, comes across as a not trust, but it's, again, it's not our money, it's a
Right, no,
town
no,
money,
I
and
don't-
so,
I really
I think-
care about the way people feel, I mean, right, I really do, and I feel like it's this board's obligation to make sure, and not anything about distrust or anything like that, it's just simply what our job is, so, and I care about the way people feel, and I don't think that they're feeling like that with regards to it, so I think if we do put stipulations around that, that's our job, and I think it's completely perfect.
And I think utilizing Jerry or even the board, is just saying something, that the town is willing to make a donation for the fiscal year of 2024, whatever it is, for funds of 41,000 to be used for the restoration of,
31 use
for
of the 10.
31,000 for the restoration of this specific said property. And the town manager or whomever will be the custodian.
I think that the way you just phrased that, Rich, is a really good way to phrase it, used for the restoration of, because when we think about, it's in the historic district, we have rules already around how things are supposed to look in the historic district, so we're saying that we're putting forward money to, as a town, to keep that area looking the way it is, and at minimum, that's keeping that aesthetic that is required in the area, and we're putting that money forward, so I think that's a good way to handle
It's
it.
restoration, because that way it takes the ambiguity of like, well, we're gonna put Wi-Fi in there, we're gonna put a telephone pole in, things like that, just for restoration funds.
Can we just back up 1 second and get it on the record? We haven't, as a board, voted that we are transferring the property, that we're choosing to put it on the warrant to transfer the property. We were waiting on the.
I think that's what we're doing right now.
Didn't you do it last?
No,
We did
we
it, we did it last meeting.
We did, to put it on the warrant,
yeah,
that's
we put
right,
it on
but
the
you
warrant.
wanted a presentation about how it was gonna be used for public.
Right.
Well, and I thought about that, and I don't think, they're not here, and I don't wanna speak for them, but I don't think what they're, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong whatsoever, I admire what they're doing, and I admire what they continue to do despite what they think and what I think. All I am saying is that if the monies have to be used for us to access it, the way Jack wrote his letter, the way I interpret it,
Yes,
it's very hard to say that's for public use. That building's not able to
It's a
be for
tough
public
sell.
use because of no parking, no egress, no facilities, no water, no heat. It's almost impossible to pass the straight.
I see what you're saying, is whether we say we think it's for public use or not, it doesn't, we don't get to just
It doesn't
define that
pass,
in the
it
law,
doesn't pass
you know,
the
it's
straight
like,
face test.
I can say I don't think I was.
I don't think it
I
does,
don't
but
think it does.
that's why I came up with this, so I wouldn't have, so we could vote to actually show our support in giving them funds.
Yeah.
Because I think it's hard for me to vote it as public money.
so is our job tonight to craft the warrant, is our job tonight just to establish the money, cause what we're trying to do is get the budget done to be able to make recommendations to the budget committee? Are we supposed to be figuring out the wording of the article?
Well, it would be nice to get, we don't have to right now, but I've never done a transfer of the building, so I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page, so I
Yeah,
can.
so given
'Cause it's-
Jerry the information, he needs to go back to both the lawyer and to generate the warrant
I see.
article itself.
Okay,
So, yeah, the whole conversation is very valid, and, yeah, the selling point, I mean, I think, and again, I think what the society put together was great information, but it still didn't, like I say, sell me on the public use. I know the intention's there, but this gives us the ability to just, mother over the money to the town. I think the town's got a lot of passion for that building, the town's people do, they put this money aside. So I think just, yeah, having those safeguards in place, I think would probably be enough for everybody to get everybody over the line to go and take the money that was already allocated and allocate it for those upgrades that we know the building needs. It's no, right, but we've been pretty open about what it needs and what it doesn't, and they need to fix that really to, quite frankly, use it like it is. So I think I think that's the selling point, is that we're gonna take the money you've already allocated and we're gonna donate it over to them, and this is the way we're gonna do it, because we just need to do it this way and be able to keep tabs on what the money's being spent on behalf of the town.
Okay, so that's one of your
Right.
things, Josh, that you wanna see, is however Jack, I assume it's Jack, is gonna write it, right? That they're gonna either come to, I think, they're gonna come to you, the restoration part, right? Are there other sticking points that people have? I have the first right of refusal sticking point.
And the
That's a
reversion.
deed.
Reversion clause.
The
That would be the
revert-
deed.
What's that?
And I don't think we wanna get into the specific, I don't know.
That's what I was
agree with you.
asking,
Yeah,
I literally
think-
just asked that,
yeah.
that's what I was asking.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think what, right now is, how I envision this for at least town meeting, is to allow the select board to enter into a real estate transact, I'm just paraphrasing, shooting out the hip here. To enter in an agreement with the Historical Society for the transfer of the Union Church here going forward. And then the lawyers and stuff can draft up whatever we want to include in the
Okay.
purchase and sales. That's the way I envision it, because I don't think you can incorporate all that in an article.
Okay, that's what I was asking, is that also what you did, okay.
And will that be incorporated before we go?
No, I think you gotta get, I think before you spend the money on the lawyer to draft that,
Do
you
it
wanna
after.
ask the town permission
Right.
to transfer it,
So
then
make sure
spend the
we're-
money on the attorney.
Okay,
So then,
So,
Cause they would say no, and then we.
You just wasted
so
$700.
right, so this would just be in our explanation to the
Right.
town, it would be, these are the things we're going to put
It's
into
just a
place.
basic question.
Yeah, basic stuff.
so I would just, my only concern with putting this money as a donation is if the restoration doesn't get completed by the end of the year.
What happens?
We could, I mean, we could ask the attorney, and I'm not, you know, like I said, we could make Jerry the custodial of the funds, make a donation, and put it in a trust that has a 5-year period or something. Does that make sense? Yeah.
are we gonna put the money question, let's say we're putting the question on,
Yep.
and the town says, I don't think it will happen, but the
In
town
case they say
says,
no.
we don't wanna transfer it, they vote it down. And then we put the question on the warrant, there has to be a thing like, because now we're gonna be
Yes or no.
asking them to transfer this money into, to give as a donation, but if they didn't transfer the building, that, we
Well-
don't wanna do that.
We'll have
Well,
one.
they voted down is what I'm getting at.
They
Or-
voted
or
down.
fail no action.
Yeah, it's failed no
Yeah.
action.
Fail no-
It wouldn't,
Okay.
it wouldn't.
But
Just
then-
making sure we have that
But fail
covered.
no, action, then do we have a obligate, we will own the building still.
Correct.
And we will have to do the repairs ourselves, so we still need the $70,000 or whatever it is that was asked for to go and make the repairs.
Oh, we're putting that on? I didn't
Well,
see that.
that's why that's what happened.
I didn't know we were putting that on.
70,000.
I didn't, but I'm just,
Oh, I
what
was
do
gonna
we
say, I
do?
didn't see that
Say
anywhere.
it, say it, just.
No, I think that goes to the next stage, that's.
I think we have the 22, whatever, and we would either do another special town meeting, or we'd wait till next year.
And we can do that, we can do that.
Now you're talking.
Yeah,
And-
we
and-
could do that. That's a other option. I didn't even think of that.
I don't see that happening, but I mean,
I
it's
don't
one of
either.
those things that we have to talk,
Yes,
okay.
I-
What
I
else
would
do
say
we?
we
I think-
figure that out if we
Right,
have
so
to
the,
cross
so
that
the building
bridge.
goes, the money's a separate thing as a donation, if the donation doesn't go, then it doesn't go, and then the building still does, and then that's the end of it.
Okay,
Got it.
so we've got this money part established for us to be able to make recommendations to the budget committee.
Yep.
Yes? Are we done with our Union Church conversation?
I have a couple of questions.
Do we?
I just
yeah,
wanna make
sorry.
sure.
Go ahead, make sure you're
straight.
straight.
See
Yeah.
if the town will donate 31,000 for the restoration of the Union Church.
Yeah.
Is that close?
Donate into,
To a restoration trust to be,
Restoration.
into a restoration trust that will be overseen, and the town manager will be the custodian of the trust, or something of that nature, or the select, or the town manager and select board, either
Yeah,
one.
you could do both.
Just give it to Jack to ask how he wants to do it, that's how I do it. Cause that building's fluid, you know, like, I think
But isn't,
17.
just a question, but, because donation, it's still public money, right?
Yeah, but we're not using it per se for a public project, we're using it as a donation,
Like like the other things that are on this,
like the scholarship fund.
Right.
the AMVETS generator, right? I mean, like, those things are,
Same thing.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So it would become one of those category type things.
And my only other question, just for clarity, when that gets transferred over to the Historical Society, we don't care, the town's not liable for any parking or windows
No,
or
no,
egress
Right.
or any of
no,
that,
no,
right?
none of that.
No, we're not. And I
Okay,
think
good, I
that's-
just want, that's
that's
right.
And I think that,
Yeah.
yeah,
I just
we're not
wanted to-
reliable, that's not ours anymore.
Right. So, I was getting confused on the whole public funds because it's not this, that, and other things, so I'm like,
It's just the
where?
way Jack worded it is how why I'm kind
Yeah,
of.
no, it was weird, worded,
Lawyers and the way they word things.
That's just, you know what I always say, you don't listen to your attorney, man, you're the fool.
okay.
Learn my lesson over the years.
There's my.
Are we, you have what you need, Jerry?
Yeah, I think so, I got
Okay.
a little bit better to go on, I'll try to
Alright.
do this, and then what I'll do is, once I have something that I think that works, I will forward that on to Jack to see how it works with it,
Okay,
too. So, at least I'll have an idea of where we're headed with it.
Okay, Jerry, you're up, I think, right?
so managers report,
Oh, yes.
so one,
Yeah, so, a few things here, so we've started the lighting, the Eureka Center is done. Town office is still working on that, it should be done this week. The town office, the Eureka Center, there's gonna be a little bit more than what they estimated because of the way the lights were wired to begin with. Kind of ran through conduit, and the conduit was fastened to the bottom of the ceiling, but the light wasn't. So to get to the wire, they had to cut the conduit and the light would fall, so they had to run a new wire. It was just easier, so be a little bit more there. Lights look good, so there's that, they should be done with that.
Are they putting an exterior light over there?
No, because it's a retrofit.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, but I
Yeah,
figured
so
it's,
it's a one
you're
for
not
one
creating
light.
new fake
Right,
features.
yeah, we could do that. Another thing, can we get back to maybe having some of you come in and sign the warrant maybe like once a week? Cause what's happening is, some of the timing, we're paying late fees and that sort of thing on our bills, and
I like
we wanna
late
try to
fees.
minimize that.
Is there a way to do DocuSign? Is that, like, is there a way to do that?
This is just one of us would stop in. like-
Yeah,
Whatever you want.
It only has to be one person?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, no, I'm not, yeah.
It's always, it used to be Todd, cause
Yeah.
he worked in the town. You know,
Yeah, the reason why I said that, cause we're getting ready to do the audit, and it was the first time I saw it where it was allowed before, where one would come in and sign a
Not
warrant,
the
so.
volunteering one, but Heather Lives are coming,
Right.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
But if we could do that, that might
Walk
help
the
Let
us.
me know what day you want.
Yeah, well, and that's probably how we'll have to do it.
Okay.
Maybe email and say,
Yeah.
warrant's ready, if you can come in
Just
and
send,
sign
send
it.
us a note, whoever's available can
Yeah,
come.
that
That's
would
good.
be good.
That's
I'm
awesome.
using my snowmobile and.
Yeah.
The revaluation RFP went out, okay, so it's due back to us on February eighth, and the bid opening is on February 12th. And Donna sent it to 12 different folks. 2 of them have already declined, so we'll see what we get when that time comes, and I'll keep you posted on that. And that's about it, I just, this budget was a lot of work, so it's gonna be some more work, I gotta make some more changes, but, good job, I like what you guys are, what you're doing.
Thank you, Jerry. Anybody have any question on the, board member reports for Jerry?
I have a question,
Go ahead.
and I might be able to answer it myself. The chief's report says the department is requesting a select board vote to use 20,000 from the grant line. Do we need to vote on that tonight?
Yeah, I think he probably would like to see that, actually.
Let me just move for the camera. Yes, Mr. Chair, if you have time, there's 27,000 in a matching grant for the town.
Right,
We've
now, a
already-
little over that, yes.
We've already accepted, as you recall, an EMA grant for 20,000, I think it's $20,035 for radios. We have all those radios in stock, we're waiting for them just to be, installed in the trucks, so we're ready to pay the bill. I just need a
a vote from you all to pay the bill, and as soon as that bill is paid, EMA comes back to the town into that line item, the same complete 100% reimbursement. But we need to front it first, and because it's over 5 and 10, we need you to.
What's the total, what's the total for all of them?
Yeah, I move we vote
It's
for,
20,035.
I move we vote to allocate 20,035 out of the grant line, or whatever. I move we do it.
Second.
Heather seconds, any discussion? No, all in favor? Okay. Motion
Thank you,
carries.
appreciate it.
No
Time
opposed.
sensitive.
All right, thank you, chief. Guys have been busy as usual. Keep up the good work out there.
On the
Same with the
record
public works, I'll give a shout out to those guys, they've been out, I know Calvin left, out cleaning the roads, they've been doing a great job on that.
pace.
So thank you.
Shovel for the next one.
Hey Jerry,
Okay.
just a question, just, only because, and
Go ahead.
Chairman might allow us or not, or the board might allow us, but being that Chief and Calvin didn't make their presentation tonight, can we just accept their, what's it called, and add it to the minutes and add it to the webpage for said reps, so they don't have to come back and read, I mean, we
Yeah.
have it, we've read it, why can't we just accept it and therefore?
Yeah, and I was.
Oh, the report?
Yeah,
The
the
Oh, I'm
report,
sorry, I thought you were
Just
talking about
accept,
the budget.
no, just accept the report as a part of our meeting,
Well,
is all I'm saying.
This was a thought I actually had, because they actually, a direct report to
Yeah.
the town manager, that, yeah, they don't necessarily have to read the reports to us
Right.
every week from now on, and they provide them, and we have questions, we can send questions back through Jerry. So, yeah, I think they should be posted, we could just accept them, like you say, Rich.
Yeah, it just
And
saves
then-
them from coming here and hanging out, if we got a question, shoot Jerry an email.
Shoot, right,
get it.
and then we'll get, right, that's what we can do from now on, that'll save everybody some time, and, we'll go from there.
Not that
We
I
all,
don't see it.
we love seeing it.
It hurts,
but-
but okay.
I'll swing by, I'll swing by.
We love seeing you guys. I think special events is a great thing, like you did with the presentations on, for the guys the other day.
Oh,
yeah. Start coming to
Oh,
all these
those
meetings.
are definitely, bring everybody here for that type of stuff, so. Calvin should do the same after they do a good job plowing, so, okay, thank you. See, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda and the minutes from last
So
meeting?
moved.
Are we allowed to ask a question about the consent agenda? No? Okay.
Just take it off the consent agenda.
I thought so, but it's fine, never mind, I'll just let it go. I mean, I'll ask it, I just won't ask it about, it's fine.
Okay.
I'll ask it in general at the next meeting.
Okay, that sounds good. Do I have a second to Joe's? Have
So-
seconds?
Quick, actually,
Discussion?
yeah,
I got a
so
motion.
by moving and accepting this, are we accepting the appointment to the planning
No.
board?
Yes.
That's what my
Yeah,
question was.
sorry. Did I skip that? We have.
It's in the
I'm sorry,
consent
I
agenda.
didn't even see it in there. Where is it?
Here.
Do we have it? I can read it.
Oh,
I'm
the,
just looking for the.
There it is, right there.
Oh, thank you. Let's see, I have, Mark, is it Durr? Deer? Durr?
is it you?
Sure, yeah.
Is it you?
That's 525 Stackpole Road. Planning Board wants to be appointed as a planning board alternate, and,
So moved.
all right, yep.
Second?
Second for Heather, all in favor? Welcome to the planning board, sir. Thank you. All right, now consent, a motion to accept the consent agenda. Joe, 10 seconds, all in favor? That's good. Okay, upcoming meetings, select board meetings on 2/13, we actually just stuck another meeting in there for tentatively for 2/6.
2/6.
Yep, 2/6, and another one at 2/27.
Sorry, John.
So we're stacked up for February, planning board meeting on 2/7. We will hear new business or ongoing business for 2024 planning board recommendations at the 2/6 meeting. Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Second, all right, we're good.
We had
thank
2
you.
minutes left over.